I've sent more than 20 million cold emails. I've booked thousands of sales calls, and I've helped my clients generate more than 45 mil in pipeline revenue. Now, in this video, I'm giving away everything I know for free. This way, you never have to watch a cold email video again, because we're gonna be covering everything from setting up your email domains to finding people to contact and even using AI to streamline the entire process, plus some live examples. However, if you can't sit here and actually take notes, then it'll be a complete waste of your time. But if you're someone who's willing to do the work, then this video is going to be extremely helpful for you. Now, the first step is buying domains and setting up what we call your email infrastructure. This way you can start sending out emails at scale. However, the way that we do this has completely changed over the past few years. So to give you the full picture, let me take you back a little bit to what cold email used to look like. So back around 2020, cold email was super simple. You could send a couple thousand emails a month, get 10 to 15% reply rates, and it felt like booking meetings on autopilot. But like all things, eventually it got saturated and those metrics started to fall. So the only solution was to send more emails than your competitors, which eventually made things harder. But with all of this extra sending, Google and Microsoft cracked down hard. Suddenly, this created a bit of a deliverability crisis where only the biggest businesses could afford the setups necessary to keep sending. But lately, that's all changed because now we're flooded with so many different cold email tools that the only way that they can compete with each other is on price. And now what used to cost $1,000 to $2,000 a month can be done for about $200 to $500. So it's obviously cheaper than ever to send a ton of cold emails. Yet most people still haven't realized this. And it's exactly why they're going to lose in the new era. But I'm already taking advantage of this and I'm going to walk you through how you can too. Because anyone can obviously send more cold emails, but not everybody can do it in a way that allows you to actually land in the primary inbox and not burn your domain. Now, the first step towards sending thousands of cold emails for cheap is setting up the right infrastructure. And this is obviously where a lot of people make the biggest mistake because setting up the wrong infrastructure can end up costing you hundreds, if not thousands more than it probably should, which defeats the entire purpose of taking advantage of this whole shift in the first place. So let me show you exactly how I set up infrastructure to send emails in this new era. So the first thing that you're going to need is an email sending tool, something like SmartLead, Instantly, or Email Bison, which is the one that we use. Email Bison is a private email sequencer that allows for isolated deliverability, which just gives us a little bit of favorable results and helps while we're doing this at scale with the number of clients that we have. The reason why you need an email sending tool versus something like HubSpot or Salesforce to send your emails is so that you're capable of connecting, hundreds, if not, in some cases, thousands of emails and domains to be able to send at the volume that you need to without ruining your primary domain reputation. It also allows for all of the emails from all of the various different sending accounts to be handled in one unified inbox, so it's easy for your SDR or inbox manager or salesperson to manage all of the incoming replies. And as you can see here, they're made for cold emails, so you can send hundreds of thousands of emails while still landing in the primary inbox and getting some really solid results. Now, if you want to send this volume of outbound, you're going to have to put together the right infrastructure, obviously. So I put together some math here. If you want to send 10,000 emails per day, which is roughly 200,000 emails per month, this is what you'll have to build out yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to build an infrastructure that is approximately 60% Microsoft and 40% Google. The reason why we're going to do this is because Microsoft is a little bit cheaper. It requires less domains. So with Google inboxes, you can send roughly 15 emails per day per email account that you have set up. The email provider that we use creates accounts in batches of 100. So if you do 15 per day in a batch of 100, that's roughly 1,500 accounts. And to get to 40% of 10,000 a day, we roughly need about 3 orders. That's going to be 4,500 emails per day. And then when it comes to Microsoft's still a little bit different. So they can send 5 emails per day per account. The provider we use sets up 99 accounts per order. So at that rate, each order is going to be roughly 495 cents. With that math, to get to roughly 60%, so 65, 45, we're going to need 13 orders. And on top of that, that's for the actual sending accounts. Those are going to require domains. And I'll show you a little bit about how we come up with lookalike domains here in a sec. But just real quick, in order to set up this quantity of Google inboxes, we're going to need 1 domain per 3 accounts, which is approximately going to be 100 domains for 300 accounts. So when it comes to Google, we're going to need 1 domain per 3 accounts. So in this case, for 300 accounts, we're roughly going to need 100 domains. And then when it comes to Microsoft, we need 1 domain per 99 accounts. So in this case, we'll need roughly 13 domains. So total needed is going to be around 113. Now, that probably sounds like a lot, and you might not even know what the point of this is, but I'm going going to show you here in a sec. So next thing you're going to want to do is jump into Pork Bun. So Pork Bun, we're going to purchase a series of domains to be able to attach to the sending accounts so we can isolate our reputation. Now, it's going to take a lot to come up with 113 domain names. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump over to ChatGPT, and I'm basically going to ask it to come up with 113 look-alike domain names that are very similar to growthflare.info, and I'll explain why I used info here in a sec. And I want these to be short suffixes or prefixes, 3 to 5 letters. Prioritize the shortest. This can include things like LL, Inc, Co, etc. The key here. All right, so once you have your domains, you're just going to copy and paste them into the bulk search on Pork Bun. So just drop them in, select add all domains that are available to your cart, and then they'll start to populate in here. I've only selected 10 for this one, but obviously you're going to use as many as you need. So in this case, it was 113. And then now I'll just explain why I used .info. So you can see here, .info came up for $257 per year, which is obviously really cheap. If you look at a .com domain, it's probably going to be something between $10 to $12, and then .co is probably going to be between $8 to $10. I would always suggest .com is going to be the most effective when it comes to deliverability. .co is going to be second, and .info is going to be third. The thing with .info though is it is 1/3 to 1/4 the price of a .com or .co domain, which at scale outweighs the benefits that you get from deliverability. So the cost that you're paying allows you to buy more domains, which the benefit of outweighs, having the better domain. So in this case, always use .info, $257 per domain, and then just purchase all of those. So now you have your lookalike domains. What you need next is your actual email sending accounts. Now, back in the day, you needed to set up your email sending accounts on your own. You'd go into Google or Outlook and purchase these accounts for $9.20 per user or per email account, or with Outlook, $8.10. So as you can imagine, with setting up thousands of sending accounts, this would get really expensive really fast. Now, with tools that we have available to us today, we can set up anything from $2.99 per month for 100 Google mailboxes, or you can see here, if you jump over to Microsoft, $2.99 for 100 Microsoft mailboxes. And there are a bunch of other solutions out there as well. You can use Zapmail, you can use Mailer, you can use Scaled Mail. There's a ton of different competitors, but for this one, we'll be using Zapmail. Now, the nice thing with resellers like Zapmail is that once you order the accounts, and it really is just as simple as that, you just go in, fill out an order form, let them know where you want the accounts to go, and you're done. In the past, you need to set up things like SPF, DMARC, DKIM, so on and so forth, all of these back-end records to make sure that your emails actually landed in the primary. But with these resellers, it's all pretty much done for you. So you fill out an order form, they put the emails in your account just like this. They automatically start the warming process, and your emails will start warming for 2 weeks. Obviously, the warm-up is necessary so that by the time you start sending in 2 weeks' time, you're able to land in the primary inbox, because your email accounts have had the opportunity to send back and forth amongst each other and just really signify that they're legitimate emails versus emails that were just set up to, spam people. Now, if you want to send more emails and generate leads without having to set up all of this infrastructure yourself, you can book a call via the first link below. We've booked over 2,000 sales calls for our clients in this last year using this exact system. And if you're interested in finding out if we can help you as well, you can book a call below. So now you've got the email infrastructure set up, but that doesn't really mean anything if you don't have leads to actually send to. And this is another point where people end up spending a lot more than they actually should, because most people just assume that building lists is going to cost them thousands of dollars, with tools like ZoomInfo and other expensive providers. So they don't even end up really looking for any sort of cheaper alternatives. But that is where they're wrong, because in 2026, if you know how to use the right tools, you can build massive lists for anywhere from $50 to $100. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is jump into a tool like Apollo, and I've started building a list here of AI companies with those that are kind of like the decision maker job titles, so CEO, owner, founder, marketing and sales leaders, so on and so forth. And then I've chosen US and Canada and built out all of my criteria there. You can see here, this is a massive list, 144,000 people. But obviously, if we want to send at the capacity that we're looking to send at and get the results that we're looking to get, we need to build a list that is capable of keeping that running. So once you have your criteria set, and this can be whatever it is that you're looking for specifically, you're going to want to jump up in here, grab the URL and pull it over to a tool like AmpleLeads. So with AmpleLeads, all you have to do is drop your Apollo search URL, include the number of leads, the max number of leads, ensure you have sufficient credits, obviously, because right now I don't, and then give your file a name and then start scraping. Now, if we were to create this list natively in Apollo or use something like ZoomInfo, this would cost us thousands of dollars. But if we're using AmpleLeads, it's only going to cost us as little as, $2.40 per 1,000 leads, which is really cheap. But once your list is ready to go, you're pretty much just going to export, download as CSV, and you're good to go. And that brings us to our last step, which is personalization. Yeah, another thing that people think is too expensive or too time consuming to actually do at scale. So most end up skipping over it entirely, completely ignoring that personalization is one of the best ways to stand out in the inbox right now. But the truth is, you don't have to choose between wasting hours manually coming up with personalization or spending thousands on automations. Because again, with the right tools, you can personalize thousands of cold emails at scale for a price that's actually affordable. Now, let me show you how it works. Now, jumping into Clay here, which is what we use for personalization, you can see with the pricing, people think that, $350 per month only gets you 10,000 credits to use against personalizations, enrichment, so on and so forth, which is absolutely nothing. They think that, you need the $800 a month plan to even get close to personalizing the number of leads that we have set up here, if not more, right? If you wanted 100,000 credits, which is close to the leads that we're gonna be sending, that's $1,500 per month. That would be absolutely insane. So what we're gonna do actually is upload our CSV into Clay, and then you're gonna have all of your basic data here. But what we're gonna wanna do is pull a few key personalizations, and you can see I've already run them here, and we're gonna use Clay's tool, Claygen. Now, obviously we were talking about how expensive the credits can be, and it's true, right? You only get 10,000 credits per month. What are you going to do with that? Now, the right way of actually doing this here is jumping into OpenAI and setting up your own API key. So if you're not familiar, OpenAI is obviously ChatGPT's parent company, and you can basically set up a subscription model where you only pay per usage with the credits that you purchase from them. And then once you have that set up and you've actually purchased the API key and you have credits coming through OpenAI, you can actually just connect that in Clay here. So you can see here, this is our GPT key, and this allows us to use that instead of actually using Clay when it comes to personalizations. And then if we jump in here, you can see we pulled a target industry, and this is costing us 0.0013 per row, which is next to nothing. And then if you want to, jump in and use it to modify content, which is basically just, instead of pulling information for personalization, editing information to customize it, it's even cheaper. You can look here, 0.00012 per row, right? So you can kind of see how it starts to become really effective at scale. Now I'll show you a quick example. In this case, we pulled the prospect's target industry, we normalized the industry, and then we pulled the exact service that they offer. So what this could look like in practice, if you were to turn this into a cold email, is something like, hey, first name, notice that you primarily service clients in the industry. And then, if we pulled that over from Clay, the industry could be, pharmaceutical industry. So this would read, hey, notice that you primarily service clients in the pharmaceutical industry. If we could help connect you with these types of individuals looking for services. So this would be another personalization. And if we jump back over to Clay, this would say like fractional CFO services or, fractional CMO services. Would that be worth a chat? And then PS, we just implemented the same process for a similar person, which helped them get X result in Y time. Now, obviously, this is just a random email copy. I wouldn't necessarily copy this, but it just gives you an idea of what these personalizations would then look like actually applied to email copy to then create more relevance. Now, one thing I actually forgot to mention inside of Clay, if you want to reduce your cost even more when it comes to using ChatGPT and your GPT key, is the model that you decide to use. So whenever you're running anything, just natively go to 4.0 mini or 4.1 nano. These are both going to be the cheapest. You're going to want to test them out, see what the results end up being like. But obviously, if you jump into some of these higher tiered models like 5.1 and 5, you're going to be spending way more. Now, obviously, we're not using credits here, but it's still proportionate to the actual credits that we'll be pulling from OpenAI itself. So you can see this one's 1, this is 0.5, and those are the two that I would recommend using to keep costs low. And again, you can see here, like, it ends up being really, really cheap. If you want to personalize a list of 100,000 prospects at 0.0013, that's going to cost you $130, which is nothing. Now, as you can see here, once you export your CSV from Clay, upload it into your sequencer, insert your email copy, add your personalizations, just like that. Make sure everything looks good. You can pretty much upload all of the email accounts that you'd purchased from the reseller, however many you ended up getting down below. and launch your campaign. Now, there are a lot of ways you can go about setting up inboxes as a part of your infrastructure, but the one that I've been using most recently is going to be premium inboxes. They offer both official Google and Microsoft accounts and handle all the technical stuff like DNS records for you. And they've been helping me book thousands of sales calls for myself and my clients. So if you want to run cold email yourself, but don't want to deal with the hassle of setting up your infrastructure and you want a bit of a discount, you can either use the code GrowthLayer20 or you can go to premiuminboxes.com using the link in the video description below. By the end of this video, you'll be able to use Apollo to start generating more leads for your business. But before jumping into using Apollo, you need to understand what it is and why it's so powerful. So Apollo is a database of over 275 million contacts and over 73 million companies, which means you can obviously find a lot of people on there for your marketing campaigns. But there are obviously like a ton of different ways that you can actually use it. So I'll just do a super brief run through here. Obviously, this is the platform itself. Once you dive in, you can see there are a ton of different tools that you're able to leverage, prospecting and enriching. So this is all your people data, your company data, lists that you want to build, any sort of data enrichment that you want to do. It also includes a sequencer. So if you want to actually send emails from this platform, you can do that too, with both emailing and calling. On top of that, they include CRM as well. So you can see like the meeting scheduler, the conversations you have, all the deals you have in the pipeline, etc. And then lastly, all of the tasks that are associated with those deals, the workflows, analytics, and so on. They're even going as far as bringing in some inbound tools such as de-anonymizing website visitors and forms, which looks like they're new / in beta. Now, the sections that we end up using the most end up being both the people and the company tabs. And these obviously let us build lists of prospects that we can reach out to without spending hours manually trying to find them ourselves. You can literally just add your filters and then Apollo does all of that searching for you. However, the reality is this is where most people really mess up, because knowing which filters to add can be a little confusing given that there's so many of them and it's not really straightforward. So I'm going to walk you through each one. So going through the list of each filters here, you can see the first one is time and current role. We actually use this one a lot given how unreliable things like revenue are and just other filters like that measure a business's longevity or success. Like if you want a business that's really established, obviously you can use minimum 10 years or minimum 15 years or whatever it is that you want to use to identify a company that's, got things up and running effectively and has been able to sustain themselves for a long time versus someone that's just fresh and really just trying to get things off the ground. Lists is obviously pretty cool if you've gone in and built out various saved searches and lists like that. Like once you build all of this out, you can pretty much save it into this spot, come back to it later. This is great if you want to refresh a list, if there has been new people that have come into the company or different things like that. Personas I actually really like using because the alternative is creating a bunch of different job titles and just inputting job titles manually every single time you want to build a list. If you know there's various different personas that you reach out to for your campaigns, whether those be like sales driven personas, marketing personas, business owner personas, so on and so forth. These are basically a cumulative group of different job titles. And you can see, you can even exclude a few there as well. So it just makes it easy. It's one click. You add a bunch of job titles that you're going to be using. And it makes that super easy. Email status, I would say, is also super important. You want to know those that are actually worth sending to. If you use an external email verifier, like I recommend, you can pretty much include every single one of these except for unavailable. Obviously, if it's unavailable, that means there's no email there. The only way you'd want to include unavailable is if you're planning to do some sort of waterfall enrichment in Clay after you build this list. Then jumping into the next one, obviously you have your job title filter. This is your typical, manager, owner, founder, so on and so forth, C-suite. You could just go in, manually choose the job titles that you want to include. And it's fairly simple. You can obviously exclude those as well, and then sort by management level if you'd rather a broader look at things. There's even departments and job function. I don't use this one as much, but obviously you can see why this might be beneficial if you're just trying to reach out to kind of like a pre-made persona almost. Company is fantastic and I think like super underutilized as a filter. So if you ever build your company list outside of Apollo, say you go to a tool like Store Leads or Clutch or something along those lines, where you're able to pull a list of domains that are 100% a particular type of company. So like, you could go to Crunchbase for SaaS, Clutch for marketing agencies, Store Leads for e-com, so on and so forth. You can pretty much just pull those domains and drop them into here if you want to look at those companies specifically, which we use all the time. And then on the reverse side of things, if your client or your team has some sort of non-contact list like DNC, whether that's in your CRM or whatnot, you can pretty much exclude any companies here that you want to make sure that you're not spending money on contacts or companies that you'll never reach out to. Next, you've got your company filter. There's basically two sides of this as well. There's the contact side and there's the account side. So the account side is going to be where the company location is. So, if you choose US, that means the company is going to be located in US. If you choose contact, that means the individual themselves live in the US. So if you're building a list and you want to focus on US based companies, just do account. Obviously with hybrid work, there's tons of people that are working for US based companies in other countries. So definitely keep that in mind. If you want to make sure that they're in the exact same time zone as you, and you're running campaigns by time zone, definitely focus on the contact level. That way you ensure you're kind of in the straight shoot for whatever time zone you're focusing on. Next, employee size. So this is the number of people within the company. This we use like on every single list. I don't even think there's a single list that we've built that didn't include number of employees. And the nice thing that this allows you to accomplish is just segmentation and filtering out companies that might be a little bit too small or too big to benefit from your service. So for us, like all of our lists are minimum, 5, 10, 15 employees, because as soon as you get lower than that, they're kind of like solopreneurs, startups, like people just getting things off the ground, which usually aren't going to be able to afford your service. And then on the flip side, when you jump into like the 500, 1,000, 2,000 person companies, that's when you're getting into enterprise territory, which is a little bit harder to break into. When it comes to these last few, like buying intent, signals, emailed open, I wouldn't give them a single second of your time. These are all kind of like beta testing tools, and the reality is none of them are really that accurate or that good. So I would just leave them for now. Now, if you want to build lead lists using Apollo without having to spend hours trying to figure out all of the filters and things like that, you can book a call below. We'll create your lead list, set up your cold email system, and turn all of your interested replies into calls on your calendar. This way, you can pretty much book meetings without having to do any of the work yourself. So if that's something you're interested in, again, just book a call below. But either way, understanding all of these filters is just the first step, because now we actually have to go in and build a list. And that's obviously where it gets strategic, because you can't just throw on a bunch of filters and expect to see results. That's what the majority of the market is actually doing, and obviously we want to stand out from that. You need to know exactly who you're reaching out to and obviously have a reason for it. And to show you an example, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I would build a lead list. All right, so I'd argue the best way to start any list on Apollo is just a list of industry related keywords. Everybody loves to jump to like the industry filters or different things like that, but the reality is that those are super inaccurate and they're kind of like blanketed. So by using keywords, I think you're able to get the best starting point, and then you can really start to refine based on different things that you find via your research. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to build a list of manufacturers, but I want to make sure that they're manufacturers that would actually benefit from a B2B lead generation service. So I did a bit of research and found that CNC/precision machine shops are manufacturers that would potentially need help with B2B lead generation. This is so because they are typically selling like complex, high value products or services, and kind of have like a narrow buyer audience, which I like. And they'll often use like your traditional trade shows and things like that to generate opportunities, which we can obviously help them optimize. So I just pulled this from ChatGPT, did some research here. This is the segment that I'm going to go after. So I'm just going to tell Apollo, and this is a keyword GPT that I use, I want to build a list of CNC/precision machine shops. We don't necessarily need to include this part. Can you expand on the keywords and other filters that I need to use? Ensure the keywords are in comma separated format. Cool. So they gave us a bit of an output. I obviously want to get more. So let's see what they come up with. I'm going to start with that and we're going to pull it into Apollo, jump into the keyword section. So the one thing that I suggest when using keywords is expanding the types of keywords. So company description, keyword name, etc. And then we are just going to copy and paste these here. Obviously that gives us a massive list because there's no other filters included on the search here. So the easy next step is going to be jumping into something like location. I want to make sure that they're United States based, and I also want the contact to be in the US too, just for ease of communication. I don't want any sort of like employees in any other countries, at least for this one. We're going to avoid industries. Again, I don't really like using industries because they're usually too broad or they overlap in a bunch of different ways. You can use them in certain circumstances when you're less picky with who you want to target, but keywords are going to be the better bet to start. And then these are the job titles that they suggest. I just want to double check that those job titles would be relevant for a B2B lead gen offer. Cool, looks good. So we're going to pull these in. Again, they're comma separated, so it makes it super easy for us to manage. Jump into job titles. We're going to include every single one of these, and we're still looking pretty massive on the list side. So we want to keep narrowing this down. We're going to focus on those that are verified, unverified, user managed, and update required. That brings it down a little bit. We're going to ignore persona, ignore time and role. Number of employees, probably the next best bet. I want to cut a little bit off the bottom and a lot off the top. So let's let this load. Perfect. So now you can kind of see the distribution of where a lot of these prospects are. In most cases, you're going to find that the distribution is skewed to the bottom. So 1 to 10 is going to have the majority of contacts in most cases, just because a lot of people are in that smaller business range, but we obviously don't want those. So I'll probably jump in. I know like our business, the sweet spot is kind of this 2 to 50 range. I think GPT suggested that we go all the way up to 200, but I think for the sake of this video, I'll probably keep it smaller because the reality is we don't need, tens of thousands of leads at this moment just for this one individual campaign. I think even at this point, 10,000 is too large. So what I would almost like to do is prioritize the job titles to the top. So you can see all of these manager level individuals. Like I'm not sure I really want to focus on these guys, especially because there's going to be a ton of them, which means the majority of the emails that we're sending are going to be going to managers. And I'd rather them go to VP level, owner, president, co-founder, head, etc. So I think that's even cleaner. And then what I would do now, you have your location, you have your employee, you have your keywords, your industry filters. If you used them, in this case we didn't, everything is set. What I would do is sample a couple leads, and you're going to want to do this in 2 ways. You're going to want to check a few at the very beginning because these are the most relevant. Apollo always ranks it from most relevant to least relevant. So I'd go into the websites of these companies, make sure that they're kind of the person that you were looking for, the company that you were looking for. And then I would go to the tail end of the list and check that as well, because that's the least relevant. You want to make sure that the last 40% of your list isn't a bunch of companies that are like completely irrelevant to what you're doing. So jumping to the tail end, here's the 98th page. I would do the exact same thing. Open this up, take a quick look at their website. Once you have all the filters exactly how you'd like, I'd also go in and save this as a new search. You can call this like US manufacturers, and we did 20 to 50, so something like that. And then that way, if you ever want to update the list or come back to it and see who are net new, who have been previously saved, you can easily do that. Now, at this point, you obviously have a list of leads that are just sitting in Apollo. However, rather than trying to get the emails directly from Apollo, we like to do things a little bit differently because it's great for finding contacts. Like obviously it's got such a wide range of what's available, but it doesn't always have every single thing that we need. So we'll scrape this list and then we'll throw it into a platform like Clay. This is where we can find some more relevant information and even make our emails as personalized as possible. See, if we were to take all of this data from Apollo, all like 7,000 leads, we'd be pretty limited for the cost that Apollo provides. You can see here, even on like the organization plan, it's $119 per month, and that only gives you 72,000 credits per year. So if we're pulling a lead list right now, just one campaign, that's 7,000 credits. You can see we can only do that 10 times in a year for the $119 plan, which obviously just isn't enough. On top of that, the emails aren't always going to be the most accurate, even with all of the advanced keyword tools and the industry filters and just layering on exclusions and things like that. Like you're still not going to have a perfect list. I would say like best case scenario with the most talented Apollo user, you're probably going to get like 70% accuracy without using a tool like Clay. And then obviously, again, if you want to personalize it and things like that, like you just can't do all of that as easily inside of Apollo. So it's much easier just to export, take it to another platform, scrape the data, put it into Clay, verifying Clay, personalizing Clay, and also qualify in Clay as well before actually pushing it through a campaign. And as you can see here, this is the tool we've been using to scrape Apollo. It's called Ample Leads. Essentially, all you have to do is take the URL from your people list. So if we go up here, grab the URL, bring it over into Ample Leads, drop that in, choose the number of leads. We'll say it was roughly 72,000. We're going to give this a name, and then we're going to start scraping. And I would scrape this to show you guys what it looks like, but there is a 24 to 48 hour wait on most lists right now. So just for the sake of this video, I'll show you a quick example of what it looks like on the other side. So pretty much once it's done, all you're going to do is export, download a CSV. And once you have the CSV, you're going to pull it into Clay. As you can see here, you're going to want to name your workbook. So we'll keep going with the manufacturers, US 20 to 50. We're going to import from a CSV, browse files, pull this in. As you can see here, it's auto-populating with all of the columns and all of the data from Apollo. And from here, you can pretty much manipulate the data however you want. You know, you can run the emails through a verifier if you want to jump in and add, like for us, we use million verifier. So you can simply add million verifier here, which double checks all of your emails to ensure that they're actually deliverable. And if you want, you can even jump in and use AI to create personalization, such as, you know, the number of locations, the client industry served, you know, whether or not there are similar companies, customer analysis, whether or not, you know, there's a hiring status, you know, if they're hiring for a particular role, and just different things like that to really make this data your own. And if you want to take things even one step further, like I was mentioning, there's tons of situations where Apollo doesn't have someone's email. As you can see here, I filtered for all of the contacts which didn't, and you can use Clay to actually find those and run a waterfall. So I'll just show you real quick what that ends up looking like. Save, run 10 rows. And as you can see here, for every single prospect that didn't have an email, we're running it through different platforms, different data providers like Find Email, Hunter.io, Prospeo, Tadegma, Witsia, and so on and so forth, until they find that email from one of the providers, and then you can merge them all at the tail end of the automation. Now, when most people build lists, they follow the same basic steps. They open a tool like Apollo, add a few filters for their ICP, build one big list, and just start sending. The only problem is the filters are usually based either on who they think their ideal customer profile is, or the characteristics of their inbound leads. But inbound and outbound are two completely different segments. People who come to you already know who you are, they know they have a problem, and they already trust you, at least a little. On the other hand, with outbound, you're reaching out to people who may never even heard of you, and they might not even know that they have a problem. So if your ICP is based on assumptions or inbound behavior, there's a good chance that it actually doesn't represent the people that are most likely to respond to your cold emails. And when that happens, you end up blasting massive lists and wasting time and money. So we're going to use real data to build lists based on the clients that we've actually gotten results for. And we're going to do it in a way where each segment we test is based on a few key filters. So if one segment worked really well, we know exactly who it was, why it worked, and how to keep building on that success. So when it comes to implementing this, you can do it in two basic ways, and I'm going to show you both. The first one, you can pick the company that you're looking at, whether it's yourself, whether it's a client, whatever that is. For this, I just used a random example of a company called Bloom, which is a marketing agency. I found their case studies page, and I asked ChatGPT to list every single one of their case studies. So you can see here, these are the featured case studies, and they have a ton of them. I chose them because they had a ton to work with, which makes it a little bit easier to display. Scrolling down, I also asked them to categorize them. So basically they had three categorizations. There was retail and e-commerce, consumer services and subscriptions, B2B financial, and then a few other miscellaneous. I also then asked them to share the website so that we could dive into things a little bit more. So we looked at these here. Now, the next thing that I'm going to want to do, now that we have all of the websites of all of the different case studies, is ask for a few different commonalities. Cool. So I've played around with the prompt a little bit, and what I've got it to spit out is a matrix, which is business model to industry to size of the company's clients. So now we can see it's broken down to the main business model, which is in this case, direct to consumer, there's omni-channel, and then there's subscription-based clients. And then the subcategory, so apparel, wellness, home, travel, so on and so forth. And then you can see this also breaks down into size. So under 50, 11 to 50, 200 to 500. And then we also have an example of each one of the case studies or clients within each category, so we know which ones that they cover, and then where the distribution kind of lies, which one has more clients in which segment, which obviously will become a bigger priority when it comes to testing. Now, again, I mentioned that there's going to be two different ways that we could tackle this when it comes to creating the lead list in these situations. So the first one is we can either take the category that we have, D2C, travel accessories, 11 to 50, similar to Canada Luggage Depot, and we can take that over to our Apollo Keywords GPT and create some keywords that help us find these types of clients in Apollo. Perfect. So the prompt for this one would just look something like this. Need you to find marketing decision makers at D2C travel / accessory companies with 11 to 50 employees, very similar to Canada Luggage Depot. And then make sure all job titles are comma separated, keywords are stacked, comma separated as well. Basically just things that Apollo needs to see. And then there you have it. You basically have every single one of the filters that you need to take over into Apollo, and you can do that manually, just plug in the keywords, plug in the job titles, so on and so forth. And again, just a quick one, if you want all of the prompts that I use in my videos similar to this one here, you can check out the link in the description. But for those of you who actually want an easier way than tackling this with Apollo, you can jump over to a tool like Company Enrich. Now, Company Enrich is realistically a jack of all trades, but I really like to use it for its lookalike feature. And I'll show you exactly what this means in a second. But essentially what you're able to do is jump into the platform, go to lookalike companies, provide an example of the type of company that you're looking for, choose whether you want it to be very specific or very broad or very targeted, and then add in your additional keywords. So we are going to number of employees. We'll probably do 1 to 50 in this case. You can go into company type, categories, annual revenue. Usually I like to keep it pretty broad just to make sure that there is a ton of information coming through. And then once this creates a company list for you, you can actually just bring it back to Apollo or use a tool like Clay, Prospeo, Lead Magic, etc., to actually get the individual's data from this. So I'm going to show you quickly what this looks like, but here are our focuses. Let's add United States as our location, and we're going to search. And then boom, just like that, you can see we have, 157 different luggage companies. Now, the thing with lookalike audiences is they're going to be small, especially when you push it to targeted, but they're going to be really good fits and exactly like the client that you got results for. And again, these are all filters that you can play around with. So if you want more companies, you can always loosen the targeting or, come up with different criteria to open that window. And then ultimately, once you have each one of these segments mapped out, you'd follow that exact process for each one of the segments, determine how many prospects are going to be available in each segment, and then detail it out that way. But again, you'll want to make sure that your criteria follows through from the initial research. So you need to know the industry, you need to know how many people are in the company, so on and so forth, each one of those features or qualities of the company that you want to test in your campaigns. Now, if you want to generate leads without having to map out these segments yourself, you can book a call via the first link below. We've used these same strategies to book over 2,000 sales calls for our clients in the past year. And if you want to see if we can do it for you, just check out that first link below. But either way, building out these segments is just the first step, because now you actually have to test them. And truthfully, this is where a lot of people mess up, because they split out their segments, maybe broadly, and then they don't test enough volume for each one, which means you can't really draw any conclusions from the testing that you're doing. For example, you send 100 emails and you get 2 positive responses, which is obviously great, but you have no idea if that's a good segment or if you just got lucky. And in the end, the entire point of this strategy is to let the market tell you what works so that you can invest into those that are driving results. So to do that, you obviously need enough volume per segment to be able to statistically validate each one. Enough so that if it performs well, you can confidently say that the segment is strong and it's not just beginner's luck. All right, so just really quick backup napkin. I've broken down the 5 different segments that we have here: D2C, omnichannel, subscription, marketplace, and financial. Each one of the segments then has multiple sub-segments. So D2C has 6, omnichannel has 2, subscription has 2, marketplace has 1, and financial has 3. For each one, we're going to want to do at least 1,000 sends per segment to validate the segment. So this can be 6,000 for D2C, 2,000 for omnichannel, same deal for subscription, only 1,000
for marketplace, and then 3,000 for financial. And then we're just gonna quickly throw these in a calculator. So 6,000 plus 2,000 plus 2,000 plus 1,000 plus 3,000. That's 14,000 total prospects that we're gonna want to send the message to be able to validate each one of the segments successfully. All right, so let's say we wanna send 2 emails per contact. So we're gonna times this by 2 equals 28,000. And then we want to do all of this testing over 2 weeks, which is 10 sending days. So that's going to equal roughly 2,800 sends per day. Now, to be able to do 2,800 sends per day, we're going to want to set up an infrastructure that is able to accommodate that, which is pretty easy. If you wanted to do all Google, that would be roughly 2,800 sends per day divided by 15 sends equals 187 accounts, which you could probably do for around $350, maybe $400 a month. Or if you're doing it via Google, which are 5 cents per day, you'd need 560 accounts, which would probably be just a bit less than Google. And then the best situation obviously is going to be having a mix of both. And again, if you want to get this all set up, you can easily purchase your domains from PorkFun and bring them over to an infrastructure provider like Premium Inboxes. The beauty of this is you're only going to pay anywhere from $250 to $350 for both Google and Microsoft, which is great. And setting it all up is literally just an order form, which keeps things super simple. So you've mapped out your segments and you've sent enough emails to get some meaningful data. Now it's time to actually figure out which segments are working and which ones that we should scrap. And that means analyzing the performance of every single segment that you've targeted so you know exactly what works and what doesn't. Now I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like for a client that we just launched. And the reason why I want to show you guys this one is because we did a really good job of tackling multiple segments, but also multiple data sources as well. So you can see here, there were 3 campaigns that we launched that were to different types of creators. And this data was actually pulled from LinkedIn. And then on the other side, we launched 2 separate campaigns. One that was to email agencies specifically, as this was one of their core clients, and one that was to e-com agencies specifically, as again, that was another core feature of one of their clients. We also drew out segments of SEO and sales agencies, but as you can see, we pivoted due to the results of the initial few agency campaigns here, which I'll show you in a second. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is the first segment here, which were the various creator campaigns, outperformed the agency campaigns like tenfold. The first 3 campaigns that were sourced from LinkedIn and from the different creator sub niches saw 19 interested responses, 10 interested responses, and 24 interested responses, anywhere from 12 to 18% interested rate. All of the reply rates were good across the board. Now, the second group of people that we reached out to were from another data source, and they were 2 other separate segments, both in the agency space, and you can see very similar reply rates. Even better in some cases. We have a 5% here and almost a 7% here, but the interested response rate was 1% for both, single digits, which is just not great. And you can tell that we tested roughly the same amount of volume for each. There's about 5,000 here and about 8,000 there, a little bit off, but close enough to get some statistically validated information. And every single one of the segments was at least 1,000 prospects. With this client specifically, we wanted to isolate the variable of the offer and the copy. So every single one of these clients in the different segments received the same offer with the same copy, because the first thing that we were trying to do was validate the segment and the actual data source. And what we've drawn from this is that these 3 segments performed 10 times better than the latter 2. And we've then gone to implement those findings in the future campaigns above. So what we're going to want to do then now is isolate the variables, right? In this situation, we know that with the same offer, same copy, these 2 segments didn't perform. Now, these 2 segments are based on one of his best case studies. So you'd assume that it would perform really well, but that's not always the case. Now, this could be for so many different reasons. Again, the data source is different, and these people receive messages, specifically the agency space and those in e-com especially, receive messages all the time. So it could be the fact that maybe the offer has been something that they've seen before. Maybe they just receive way more emails and therefore, don't really see exactly what it is you're sending to them, so on and so forth. But what we knew with this client specifically is that we wanted to target those companies somehow. So what we ended up doing and drawing as a conclusion in this case was reaching out to these agencies the agencies that we want to target and had a hard time with these 2 campaigns, but in the way that we sourced this data from. So these 3 campaigns, we sourced the data well, and that data that we sourced drew good results. So now what we're doing is replicating that with these 2 campaigns above and sourcing the data from LinkedIn, LinkedIn engagement, LinkedIn post commenters, competitor community followers, basically just alternatively sourced data. Again, these guys were sourced from Apollo, which is a very inundated platform and people use it all the time. So by getting creative with the data source, we've seen that the priority here is to focus on the segments we want, but use data that's a little bit less inundated. And again, if you want some definitive metrics for success versus non-success, I'd probably look for 1 booked call for every single 1,000 messages sent. And if you didn't get that, you can see here, this is a 24 to 2,300. That's fantastic. 10 to 12, fantastic. 19 to 24, pretty good. But these 2 were obviously weak. Now, once we've determined this, we can jump on to another segment and test if we want to segment based on the job titles that we're reaching out in the next test, or maybe get into testing different variations of the offer itself. Now that we've cracked that, we can do it. But the idea is to do this very step by step. The first thing we isolated for the offer and the copy, that was all the same. But then we varied the different segments that we were reaching out to, as well as the data source that we got these segments from. And because we isolated all of these variables, we're able to draw conclusions going into phase 2 with this client. But again, the goal is going to be to constantly cut losers, double down on winners, rinse and repeat until you have a perfect result. Using LinkedIn as a source of leads is one of the best ways to book calls from cold email, simply because it has the most up-to-date information in any industry that you can think of. The only problem is LinkedIn is super strict about banning scrapers and the accounts that actually use them, which makes consistently generating leads from the platform way harder than it needs to be. Luckily, I found a tool that allows you to scrape emails from LinkedIn for cheap without getting banned. And I'm about to show you exactly how to use it. Now, the first step is actually finding a source of leads from LinkedIn. And there's gonna be a ton of different ways to do this, including just using Sales Nav or scraping post engagers. But one of the easiest ways is actually using communities where your ideal customers are already hanging out. Now, to find these, we don't really need to overcomplicate things. We can literally just jump into ChatGPT. So I'm gonna jump in and just ask for what are the largest communities on LinkedIn of fractional executives. Super niche target audience, probably one that would be harder to find through other mechanisms. So let's see what it'll come up with. Sweet, so that just wrapped up and you can see the numbers are pretty insane. There's a community here of over 19,000 followers, 18,000 followers, 14.6, 14.3. Now, odds are a lot of these are gonna be overlapping, like those that are in one community will likely be in the other. So I'm just gonna go with one of the largest. Let's stick with Fractionals United. Sweet, so now you can see we're on the page here and they have roughly 15,000 followers. Next, we're gonna use following.co to scrape the leads. And if you're not familiar with following.co, it's a scraping tool that we've been using lately to scrape both sales nav orders and LinkedIn followers. And the beauty is it's as simple as just dropping in LinkedIn URLs and pulling the lists. And you can see here, you can get the leads for as little as 0.0035 per credit, which is super cheap. Now, not only is that cheap compared to some of the other scrapers, it's also gonna be a lot higher value given that they're fairly high intent when it comes to something that you'd be pulling from Apollo. When you pull lead lists from Apollo, you're probably looking at like 20 to 30% fluff that you're going to be paying for and then filtering out later. So in this case, when you're pulling from the direct source, there's going to be a lot less that you're paying for that you're not actually going to use. Now, again, all you have to do is take that sales nav URL, which we pulled from here, bring it over into following, choose the number of leads that we want. So in this case, again, looking here, we see 15,000 followers. We'll let them know we want all 15,000, and then we will call this fractional executives from Fractionals United. And then from here, all you have to do is submit a quote request. So unlike some other instantaneous order forms, they're actually going to confirm how many leads are available, double check the lead count, and then give you a price based on that. So you're not paying for anything that you're not actually going to get. Then from there, all you have to do is accept and then pay. And as you can see here, we get everything from first name, last name, job title, 2 different emails, so both business and personal, the company phone, mobile phone in some situations, LinkedIn URL, company name, company domain, the city, LinkedIn ID, so on and so forth. Pretty much everything that you need to do outreach. All you have to do is verify and you're good. In other situations, oftentimes what you're doing is you're just pulling company data and you still need to enrich for person data. But in this case, you're actually just getting the keys to the ship. Like you can straight up take that first email, that company email, shoot it through a verifier like Million Verifier, and you're set.
Imagine opening your inbox to a list of replies from people who actually need what you're selling. That's the dream for anybody doing cold outreach. Yet most people have no idea how to make that a reality. They're either stuck sending emails to people who never answer them, or they're left with replies from people who will never buy their service. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you how to find leads that are actively looking for what you sell. This means that instead of wasting your time with random responses, you can focus on actually closing deals. And these are the same strategies that we use to help clients like Stroud Inc. book 24 calls in just 30 days. Now, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to do the same. But before we jump into the first strategy, you need to understand exactly what this method is and why it works so well. Basically, instead of reaching out to people based on standard data like their industry, company size, etc., you actually target them based on signals that show you what they need at that specific moment. For example, if you're a YouTube content agency, you could send 10,000 cold emails to business owners in your random niche. Or you could send 10,000 emails to business owners who already have 2,000 subscribers and are clearly investing in video content. Which one do you think will get more replies? Now that is the entire point of intent-based targeting. And the first thing that we're going to cover in this video is based on a very similar principle, because it's actually going to be targeting people or businesses based on their social media activity. Now, this works best for anybody selling content related services or anything related to growth, like YouTube agencies, short form content agencies, LinkedIn ghostwriting, podcast production, PR, and so on. And the intent signal here is simple. If someone is already active or big on one social media platform, they clearly care about their online presence and are open to investing in growing it even more. Which means when you reach out offering to help them do exactly that, it's far more likely that they'll actually pay attention to your email and reply. And the best part is this strategy is incredibly versatile because you can target people on any platform, including LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever really fits your service best. The only tricky part is actually finding these leads at scale and then approaching them in the right way. So let me walk you through how to do it. Now, the first and the easiest way of doing this is going to be tackling those with high LinkedIn followings. And you can actually just do this natively on Clay. Didn't know this for the longest time, but as you're building out your find people search, you can literally just jump in and build out your criteria as you would normally with your company attributes, job title, location, etc. But the biggest thing here is actually jumping in and using the profile section. So you can look for particular keywords on LinkedIn if that's what you're looking for. And then you can also add a minimum number of connections and minimum number of followers. So if you want somebody who takes LinkedIn fairly seriously, you can do a minimum of 5,000 followers, and then you can see the list will update here based on that. The one thing I found with this is it does fluctuate a little bit. Like I've had people with 3,000 followers come in sometimes when I put the limit at 5,000. So you want to be conservative with where you put that baseline. But if you're trying to guarantee that somebody is, invested in growth, if you go up to something like 10,000, you're almost guaranteed to get a good list. And if you want to add a bit of specificity to it, you can see here I just simply added marketing services, owner, founder, United States, and we can already see guys like Eric Noslowski and Clifton Sellers jumping into the list. And then if you want to scrape any of the other platforms, I'd recommend jumping onto Appify. You can see there's a TikTok scraper here, Instagram scraper, YouTube scraper, and so on. And all of the same principles apply that they did to LinkedIn. LinkedIn's just a little bit easier. And I can show you here like a brief example of the TikTok scraper that we ran through Appify into Clay. And then you can see an example of the output here from the TikTok scraper where you can get everything from the text from the post and then various different posts here as well. Now, what if instead of content, you're selling sales or lead generation services? Maybe you're a cold email or a cold calling agency, maybe you have a CRM service, or you sell sales tools. Once again, intent-based targeting can be equally effective at generating qualified, interested leads. The only difference is that instead of a strong social media presence, ad spend could become your main signal. And the logic here is pretty simple, because if companies are already investing thousands of dollars into Facebook or Google ads, chances are there's new ways to reach more people. And the easiest way to pitch them is to position your service as a way to optimize their existing growth efforts. This way, you're not just cold emailing any random business that may just barely be getting by, you're reaching out to companies that are actively investing in customer acquisition. So let me show you exactly how to set it all up. The first thing you're going to want to do is jump into a platform like AdIntel.
and subscribe, you can see they have a free trial there, but the pricing is also really affordable. You can pay $44 a month for 5,000 credits. And then you also have two options. You can either run it directly out of AdIntel itself, or you can use the API and link that up to your Clay account. Now, if you're going to be doing any sort of lead list building at scale, I definitely recommend doing it via Clay, but again, you can do it either way. So jumping into Clay, I've got my core list here. And then what we want to do is run AdIntel from Clay. So if you go ad enrichment, you can actually just search AdIntel here, check for meta ads, check for Google ads, and you can run it via Clay if you don't want to get an AdIntel subscription. But again, I definitely recommend just using your API key and connecting it that way because it's much cheaper. Once you've got it set up, it's as simple as connecting your API key, as you can see I've done here, linking the company domain, and even linking the Facebook page URL if you have it. I would definitely recommend doing this if you can, because the hit rate's going to be much higher. But again, that's an extra step. So totally up to you if you want to do that. It still, as you can see here, has a decent hit rate when you're just using the website. And then once you run that prompt, you'll have a bunch of information populate here. So you can see whether or not there's any that are active, the number of ads, the unique number of landing pages associated, which is also interesting. You could use that potentially for a funnel building offer. And then you can dive into a bunch of other information here as well, depending on what you need, such as the body of the ad itself, the title, the CTA, so on and so forth. For us, the most important thing to know is whether or not they're active, and then also how many ads they're running. Because if someone's running a ton of ads, that means they're pushing a ton of spend, which means they're in high growth mode. And depending on the industry, you can run this exact same play for Google ads. It's pretty much just the exact same steps on AdIntel. Same data, same everything. All right, now that you have two solid strategies, depending on what your business offers, there's actually one more that I wanted to mention, and I need to be upfront about it. It's usually a low volume play, and it's not my go-to for most clients, but when included as a part of the broader targeting strategy, it can provide some solid results. And the best part is it works whether you're selling content services, sales services, web development, bookkeeping, HR, consulting, like you name it, because the only intent signal it focuses on is whether or not a business is currently hiring for your service or something that is relevant to your service. So if a company just posted a job listing for YouTube channel manager and you run a YouTube agency, then you can pitch your service as an alternative. That way you're positioning yourself as a faster, more effective choice. Now, the only issue is that the volume of relevant job posts will usually leave you with fewer potential leads than you'd get from the other two strategies that we already covered. But the thing is even if you can find 500 to 1,000 companies hiring for your exact service, if you convert even like, let's say 5% of them, that's 25 to 50 qualified calls from people who need what you do right now. So let me show you how to find these opportunities. All right, so when it comes to the hiring trigger, you can basically build this out in two different ways. You can either build from the hiring trigger itself, or you can use an existing list and then find those that are hiring within the list. When you build from the hiring trigger, you're going to have a higher hit rate and the list will likely be bigger. But if you're going from the list to the hiring trigger, it's going to be smaller. Again, I'll show you both. So the first one, going from open jobs, Clay actually does this natively, works really well. You can jump in and look for a particular title. So if I'm offering cold email services, I could easily jump in and look for open SDR roles or BDR roles or anything that has to do with business development. If they're hiring for somebody like this, if I have a solution that potentially is an alternative to that, it's going to be pretty solid when it comes to relevance. And then again, you can see just putting in these two specifically, we have over 8,000 results. And then, that's going to get narrow as soon as you add things like location, so on and so forth. But again, you can stack job titles here because the reality is everybody's going to have different names for the types of job titles that you want to include. So I'd really just throw as many as you can that you can think of in a particular area and every single variation of that. If you need help with it, just throw it into ChatGPT, ask it to come up with 50 different ways that people position that name. Now, the second way of doing it is basically the opposite. So we have a pre-existing list and we want to know if anybody on that list
is hiring for a particular role. All right, so we'll jump back to this example for this one, and you can see here we're looking for any sort of senior marketing roles. All right, so jumping into the prompt here, you can see we used GPT-4o Mini on web research mode. You can realistically use any model that you want. This is just the one that we found worked well for this specific use case. Usually we use like 4o Mini, different things like that to get baseline results, but again, this worked perfect for this situation. We just looked at their company name, their website, then their company LinkedIn, and looked to see if they were currently hiring for active marketing roles. Now again, this is not going to have an amazing hit rate. You know, going the other direction in is going to be a lot better, but if you're just trying to find a signal in this situation, it's going to work. And you can see here, if I go filter, hiring, does not contain. So you can see here, of the 2,350 rows that we had, or 2,350 prospects, only 281 actually were hiring for roles in this space. So again, you can tell that the hit rate is not necessarily going to be that high, but these are going to be great leads to reach out to. The nice thing with Clay is you can realistically come up with like conditional formatting. So in this campaign specifically, we were pulling a bunch of different things. We were pulling meta ads, we were pulling Google ads, we were pulling the hiring status, we were pulling TikTok shop status, and you basically come up with a bunch of if-then statements. So if a prospect has one piece of data or one intent piece of data and not the other, then it goes into X campaign. And if it has, you know, the other and not X and Y, then it goes into Y campaign, and then the copy is going to be different for each one. Since it's Claygent too, you can really come up with flexibility for the output and what you want specifically versus like a native integration or via API. So you can see here, we just specifically wanted the role that they were hiring for. And then if it returned not hiring, we knew that they weren't hiring at all.
I built a scripting system that consistently converts. However, when I see what most business owners are sending, I almost cringe, because they either write these long essays that nobody reads, or they send pitches that immediately scream, I'm going to sell you something. But the reality is the emails booking the most qualified sales calls are the complete opposite. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to write them. So if you're someone who's sending out cold email and, you know, maybe not getting any responses, or you're booking unqualified leads, this video is for you. Now, the first thing that you need to do before you write a single word of copy is actually just nail down the offer. And this is where most people completely miss the mark. It is truly the 80-20. They assume they can just pitch their main service in cold email and expect people to respond. But think about it for a second. You're a complete stranger in someone's inbox. They have no idea who you are, and you're asking them to commit to a $10,000 contract or some big retainer just from reading one email. Honestly, that's never going to work. So the first part of writing a killer cold email script isn't the subject line or the preview text. It's actually just creating an irresistible offer. Something easy and low friction that gets them to respond without feeling like they're committing to anything major. Now, for this video, I chose to challenge myself a little bit and just use a random company that I found on ChatGPT. So for this one, we're going to jump into Disruptive Advertising, who's a full service B2B growth agency. Now, after a little research, I found that their offer is essentially a risk-free guarantee, get results in 90 days or you don't pay. It also looks like they're running a free audit for this offer as well. But here's the main problem with these offers, especially if you're looking at this from a cold outbound perspective. Now, they have the idea of an offer correct in theory, but they're missing a few features. And I would say there's probably like two major changes that they would need to make. One, there is no definition of results at all. Like what does the results mean? How much money is that going to be? What kind of ROI is that going to be? You don't really know what they're trying to say here. It just means like, you're going to get something from this in 90 days or you'll get a refund. Not exactly the most straightforward. They did nail it here to suggest that this is only for qualifying brands, which I think is smart. You know the brands that you're going to be able to get the best results for and the qualities that make them up. So in this case, if you know the qualities, you should be able to suggest like a minimum ROI or return on ad spend or some sort of revenue here if you're then qualifying the brand. So you could just be a little bit more specific there. And then on the audit side of things, I like the idea of doing an audit to some degree, but the word audit is just so overplayed. And the reality is when you're doing outbound, nobody really wants an audit from somebody that they don't know. They don't know that you're necessarily going to be an authority figure or someone that knows the space better than they do. So to them, an audit means nothing. An audit means that they have to jump on a 30-minute call and waste their time. So if I wanted to create an email that could potentially land them a $250,000 deal, I need to turn this weak offer into something that nobody can ignore. And let me show you exactly how easy this is. So I'm going to be jumping over into ChatGPT, and I'm going to keep this super simple. And if you're interested, just drop a comment below and I'll actually shoot you over this custom GPT if you want to test it out yourself. So I'm going to run this custom GPT that I've built out, and I'm going to say, I want to build an offer. Currently, they have a risk-free guarantee, get results in 90 days or you don't pay, and they have a free social ad audit. I'm also going to share their case studies just for a little bit of relevance when we're building out the offer. So I'll pull these two here specifically that they've worked with. Funny story, we have actually run outbound for Nani Swimwear just over a year ago, which was not planned. Cool, so let's see what it comes up with. All right, so diving into what it created for us, it's basically suggesting three things. One, a revenue leak sprint. So this one's almost like an audit, except framed more around the potential loss that you could be experiencing versus potential gain. I kind of like that idea. Loss is always going to be something that you want to pressure on more than what they can get out of something. I think this could work if you played it properly, especially if you position this as a free video or a lead magnet or something that is low friction. The problem is, again, you get into the problem with audits where like, who are you to suggest that you know better than they do about the system that they're running? And then even on top of that, having to give them access to your backend, like to your Meta ad manager, it's going to be a tough one to do via cold because they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you. There's nothing established yet. Creative validation test, I actually really like this one because it's essentially a free deliverable. So we'll launch and validate 3 to 5 paid social creatives using our internal benchmarks before you commit to full management. So what they get, 3 to 5 conversion focused creatives, which includes angles, hooks, formats, small controlled spend tests, clear winner and loser decision framework, creative insights that they can reuse even if they don't continue. So this obviously works well because you're allowed to test things out before you actually commit to working to them. It could also be fairly low effort depending on the creative strategy. But again, when it comes to offers, you can really just crank up the qualification for the brand that's coming to you and just only offer this high effort thing to those that you really want to work with. The last one that they suggested here is a feed to ad profitability snapshot, which I mean, that kind of sounds confusing. We'll show you how much more profitable your ads could be by fixing your product feed, not increasing spend. So this is more like conversion rate optimization, I guess. Like, I don't really like this as much because it's not really transitioning well into the core offer. If the core offer is doing their ads, you know, maybe you're helping with existing ads, which is going to appeal to a certain percentage of the market, but it's not going to appeal to those that maybe haven't launched ads yet. There could be an argument on like, you know, those that have already launched ads are going to be better fit prospects. Those that haven't are probably going to be earlier, maybe not as profitable, but I think that's maybe getting too into the weeds. So I think in general, we'll probably build out a few variations of offer number 2 here. Now, if you want to book meetings with qualified leads without spending time learning how to write the cold emails yourself, you can schedule a call using the first link below. We've helped our clients book over 2,000 calls in the past year, probably more by now, by taking care of every single step in the process. Everything from setting up the infra to creating offers to winning scripts that consistently convert. So if you want to see if we can do the same for you, simply book a call below. But either way, now that we have a solid offer, the next step is actually writing the email. And this is where a lot of people make their biggest mistake because they assume it's the email copy that needs to do the selling. So they write an entire essay, they try to build trust, they try to establish credibility and convince the person reading that they should respond, when the reality is that most people aren't even going to read half of that. People have become so over conditioned to receiving marketing emails that as soon as they feel like they're being sold to or persuaded in any way, they just immediately stop paying attention. So here's the thing. None of these long, hyper-personalized emails are even necessary, because as long as your offer is strong enough, remember I said it was the 80-20 of all of this, then the copy doesn't have to sell anything. So all the email really needs to do is present the offer in the most casual, frictionless way possible. And that's why I'm going to be writing one out live right now so that you can see exactly what I mean. All right, so I actually want to jump into Claude for this one because I think Claude is so much better with copywriting. And truthfully, I could probably write this one from scratch, but I want you guys to see my thought process when I'm actually writing these things out and how I use AI to at least start the initial copywriting on my end. So again, I want to make this super easy. I'm literally just going to grab the offer and bring it over to my Claude project. All I've said in this Claude project is, okay, let's go. And they basically said that, okay, I've got the full framework loaded, ready to execute. This is the comprehensive battle-tested system for generating low, high converting B2B cold email scripts. And this is basically just a custom Claude project that I put together. It usually asks me to provide the front-end offer, lead magnet, who we're reaching out to, core outcome promise, social proof, case studies, so on and so forth. And we'll get this one going. And I actually want to drop in the social proof too, just in case we need that for a PS line. I also want to add a quick note. So I've been running meta ads myself, and I know that one of the biggest pain points that people are dealing with right now is the constant updates that Meta has. So most recently, their Andromeda update is causing some headaches with people because it just runs a little bit different than it did prior to. So things that were working before might not be working now. So I almost want to frame this around that pain point where this is going to be a post Andromeda solution, so they know what exactly is working in this new environment. All right, so we've got the output back from Claude, and you can see here the first email is just first name. If we could test 5 creatives for company name and prove which ones convert before you commit to anything, would that be worth exploring? PS, Nani Swimwear saw 942% lift in adds to cart using this exact test. The second one paints the picture a little bit more. First name, notice most D2C brands are bleeding budget on pre-Andromeda creative strategies. If we could pinpoint which hooks actually convert in Meta's new system before you scale, would that be helpful? I like this one because it's still short to the point. The one thing that I would change though is like this second line here should be more focused on the free creative offer. Like if we could do 3 to 5 creatives for you that actually convert in Meta's new system before you scale, would that be helpful? I think that would be a lot better. Pinpointing which convert, nobody really knows what you're getting out of that. Like, is that a call? Are you going to send me a document? Is that just going to be you replying to the email with the things that I need to do? It's really not clear as to what they're getting out of that. Here's another one. So first name, tired of agencies promising the world without proving creative actually works first. We'll test 5 conversion focused creatives for company name in 14 days, hand you the winner loser framework to keep them, even if you don't continue. Worth a quick look. Then the next one, first name, if I could uncover which creative angles actually cut through Meta's post Andromeda noise and hand you the clear winner and loser data in 14 days, would that be worth exploring? No retainer, just razor sharp insights you keep regardless. One swimwear brand dropped CPAC by 76% using this exact process. I actually kind of like this one in the first little bit here. If we could uncover which creative angles actually cut through Meta's post Andromeda noise and hand you the clear winner loser in 14 days, would that be worth exploring? When it comes to the no retainer note here, kind of sounds salesy. And then again, razor sharp insights, marketing lingo. And then here, like as soon as you jump into really crazy acronyms and things like that, you lost them. Like people want to know that you made more money, you saved more money, not the swimwear brand dropped CPAC by 76%. I run meta ads and I don't even know what that means. So I think the average brand owner isn't going to know what it means as well. So I would just keep it stupid simple when it comes to the social proof. So the 5th variation is first name, most D2C brands are drowning in creative guesswork while Meta Andromeda update quietly kills what used to work. If we could validate 5 conversion focused creatives for company name in a controlled 14-day test and crystallize exactly which hooks drive add to cart before you commit $1 to the ongoing management, would that be helpful? Keep the winner loser framework either way. I actually really like this one. The one thing that I would change in almost all of these email copies is just reducing the perceived friction a little bit with the CTA. So instead of saying, would that be worth exploring? Would that be worth a chat? Would that be worth whatever? Just change it to, would that be worth sharing more? Now, sharing more could mean jumping on and having a conversation, but it is perceived as lower friction because you're just providing more information, right? Like it'll kind of allows you to go multiple directions without being pigeonholed into whatever it is that you're offering. On the flip side, I'd also maybe test something very specific, as if you keep it broad, they might not really know what they're getting out of it. So try both. So I actually wanted to take 3 of the ones that I thought were the best and update them or rewrite them just to show you exactly what I would end up doing here. So for this one, first name, no M dashes ever, that screams ChatGPT. First name, notice most D2C brands are bleeding budget on pre-Andromeda creative strategies. So I would change this one to notice most D2C brands are still bleeding budget due to Meta's recent Andromeda update. The benefit here is if they don't know what Andromeda is and they haven't actually heard of it, there's going to be curiosity. They're like, wait, is there something I'm missing? Like, am I losing money potentially? And I don't even know what's going on. And then again, in this one, we want to, if we could create 5 ad creatives for you completely free following Meta's new system. Best practices. Would that be worth sharing more? If we could test 5 creatives, we could create 5 creatives for you completely free and prove which ones convert before you commit to anything. Would that be worth sharing more? P.S. Naughty Swimwear saw a 942% lift in ads to cart using this exact test. Perfect. First name, most D2C brands are drowning in creative guesswork while Meta's Andromeda update quietly kills what used to work. If we could validate 5, if we could create 5 ad creatives for you completely free in a controlled 14-day test and crystallize exactly which hooks drive ads to cart before you commit $1 to ongoing management, would that be helpful? So I like that one a lot. And then I would do one super direct, so almost like first name, if we could ideate, design, script, and edit 5 free ad creatives based on Meta's new Andromeda update. So I'd test something super direct like this. If we could ideate, design, script, and edit 5 free ad creatives based on Meta's new Andromeda update with just 10 to 15 minutes of your time, would that be worth sharing more? So again, this overcomes the objection of it taking a lot of their time. Super low friction CTA. The only thing that I would maybe test about this one is maybe positioning it around the results that Naughty Swimwear got. So it'd be first name, if we could ideate, design, script, and edit 5 free ad creatives based on Meta's new Andromeda update with just 10 to 15 minutes of your time, would that be worth sharing more? And then you could add the PS. This is exactly what we did for Naughty Swimwear, who went from X result pre-Andromeda update to Y result post-Andromeda update. And I think that would perform really well. Now, even if you have a great offer and a solid first email, that might not be enough to get everyone to respond, because the reality is that a lot of people might not even see your first email. Their inbox may be flooded, they may be too busy at the time, or even if they wanted to respond, they may have just simply gotten distracted. So the only way to make sure you're booking as many calls from your initial offer as possible is to have follow-ups that keep you top of mind without sounding desperate or annoying. And luckily, these are just as easy to write as the main email. Now, luckily, the prompt generated a few different options for us. I think when it comes to follow-ups, you can basically go one of 2 different directions. Because the initial email that we're using is so small, you can do, again, one of 2 things. You can add to the email because it's short. Maybe something that we didn't include in the first email could be included in the second email. This might be overcoming an objection, like FYI, this isn't X, Y, and Z, or this doesn't take a lot of time, or whatever the objection is. So that's one way of looking at it. And then the other could be simplifying the response. So if we go back to some of these which kind of paint the picture, like first name noticed most D2C brands are still bleeding budget due to Meta's recent Andromeda update. If we could create 5 ad creatives for you completely free, blah, blah, blah. What we would do in the follow-up for this one, it could just be as simple as like, first name, if we could create 5 ad creatives for you completely free, would that be worth sharing more? So you're almost like stripping it back a little bit, taking away the whole like painting the picture aspect, and then just making the offer be the message in and of itself. So super simple, strip back, nothing else. If you are already using a strip back version like this, you'd probably have to add to it. But alternatively, you could take a stab at doing something along these lines here. So if you see this one, they said first name, should I send over a Loom video walking through exactly how the 14-day validation process works? So here, there's like zero friction at all. If they're interested in the benefit, there's no reason that they're going to say no to a Loom video walking through the process. So you could literally just do a talking head, show them exactly how it works, exactly what your thought process is with the free ad creative testing, and even like disqualify people as you're doing it. Like we have one client right now, and he will intentionally tell them the strategy behind doing the free creative. Like he'll say, truthfully, like we're only offering this free creative to those that we think that we're going to get really, really good results for. And if you don't meet X, Y, and Z criteria, we're probably not going to do the free thing for you. And this basically allows you to not waste your time on that initial first call. It'll disqualify anybody that just wants the free thing and doesn't actually want to find a solution to their problem and work with you long term.
Now, before you start to write anything, you need to understand what a winning cold email script is supposed to do. See, the entire point is just to start a conversation that ends up leading to a call. And the best scripts obviously do this by getting open, getting read, and getting responded to. So those would be the 3 main goals in that exact order. Because if your emails can do those 3 things, obviously booking meetings becomes much easier. Now, let me show you what a winning script that nails all of those looks like. So just jumping into a few client accounts here, I wanted to show you an example that I thought was really good. So the first one here basically starts with capital stack question, the subject line short, all lowercase, curiosity inducing, makes you want to see what the message is about. Once you dive in, it's very short to the point, calls out their specific industry, a multifamily developer, builds a little bit of pain, but doesn't focus on it too much, mentions what the solution is. Then the best part, I think, is right here. So 12 million funded, under 45 days, only took 1 discussion. This is the offer. This is what you can get. You can get $12 million in funding. It'll only take 45 days. And all you have to do is have 1 call worth 15 minutes to see if we can pull this off for you. So again, it's almost like the same concept as a one-liner where it's very offer focused. This one specifically pulls in a little bit of pain building, but not too much that, the reader gets boring, jumps into what matters, and then jumps into the CTA. Now that one was more offer focused. I want to show you one that was a little bit more front-end offer focused. So this one here, again, Instagram question. It's short, to the point, doesn't really give off what exactly the thing's going to be about. It's Instagram, but you don't know what about Instagram. And again, curiosity inducing. My partner stumbled upon your Instagram, so it kind of makes it look like we were checking them out. Notice 3 changes that we can make to your organic posts to increase engagement, and then boom, right into the front end offer. If I recreate one of your posts with these changes for free, would this be a good place to send it? So essentially, we're just offering to recreate one of their Instagram posts with what we know about the industry. And that's it. No social proof. It's very clear what you're going to get from responding to the email. So now that you know what a winning script looks like, let's build one from scratch. And the first thing we need to do is nail down your offer. Now, I'm not talking about your main service because no one really cares about your main service until they actually know what's in it for them. So your offer obviously just needs to answer one simple question. If I answer this email, what am I going to get out of it? But most people still get this wrong. They'll either make it too vague, too salesy, or they don't even really understand what an offer is in the first place. So let me show you some examples of what not to do with your offer, and then I'll show you what you should do instead. So I thought it'd be interesting to go into my junk mail, and take a look at some of the cold emails that I received and the offers that they provided. So in this case here, I found your details on your website. As an SEO specialist, I help drive more traffic to your site with expert services. You see here, they think that the offer is their main service. So they're just pitching their main service. And then the actual thing that they're providing, like what you'd get if you responded to this email, was a proposal and a pricing structure. So basically saying I do this thing, here's what it costs, buy my stuff. Not the greatest example here. This one was not one I had in my inbox, but basically just your typical hey, I'm so-and-so, I'd love to schedule a call and tell you about my services, who we are, what we do, how we operate, go over packages, timelines, full range of deliverables. The offer is to
tell you what they do, which again, we don't really care about. This one here, you know, they started with some criticism on my channel, said that I can help you monetize your channel, increase your watch time, and reach your targeted audience. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to contact me. So again, just saying like, this is what we do, you know, we can help you. Great. And then the last one here, this one was really interesting. You know, bonus offer, buy 20, get 3 free. I help businesses grow online visibility by combining ethical review support, SEO. Again, they're just talking me. Nothing tangible. You don't really know what's going to happen when you reply. Now, on the flip side, some really good offers. One I found here, saw you're hiring for sales related roles. Can I send you 100 verified contacts which match your ICP with email so that the salesperson has something to work on from day one. This is really good because they accomplish relevance by actually pulling information about the fact that we are hiring for a role and then providing value based on that piece of relevance. This one here, they specifically call out that we're a lead gen agency, which I think was awesome. And then they offer to do a free conversion focused website. And then they also suggest that, you know, the only cost on our side will be the monthly expenses, maintenance, etc. Do you want us to reserve one limited spot? The one reason why I like this offer is because we're in a environment right now that's very low trust. And even when people offer things for free, people get skeptical. They're like, you know, why are you offering this for free? They actually expanded into that exactly here where they're saying, you know, we're offering this free website because we want to expand our portfolio and feature a few standout brands. So there's a reason behind them doing the free value. And then another one here, this one was really good as well. Formatting of the email was a little bit off, and maybe don't use growth flare Inc. as a variable. It's kind of silly, but regardless, they say AI agent spotted over 55 prospects, which are showing buying intent for, they could have said your company or you or your service or something like that. But again, besides the point, are you interested in me sending you a short resource outlining how you can identify these kinds of prospects yourself? So again, the offer is just them providing you the walkthrough on how you'd accomplish the desired result, which is really good. And then another one here. So if I took a net loss to bring you 2 full fee retainer clients within the next month, simply in exchange for a review, would you be interested? Again, you know, if I took a net loss, so they're implying that they're incurring expenses on your behalf, providing you 2 full fee retainer clients, which is great. It's going to occur in the next month. That's the time frame. And then they also add this section here, just in exchange for a review. So you know why they're doing it. I'd say all of these are solid, and the commonalities are basically that they're short, to the point, very offer focused. You know exactly what you're getting out of it. There's no resistance at all. They all kind of inspire the, you know, why not? Like, why wouldn't I reply? I may as well just see what they are sending just by saying yes. And it's as simple as that. You know, you're not asking for anything crazy. You don't need some detailed reply. I could just say yes to every single one of these emails and get the thing that they're providing. Now, if you want to create your offer from scratch, I would go about it fairly simply. This doesn't have to be complicated. So you could say something along the lines of like, you know, I am an Amazon growth agency. I want to create an offer for Amazon brands. One of the first things I'd maybe build the offer around is like, what's one thing that Amazon brands are really struggling with given the current climate? So like climate could be economic climate or whatever. All right, so this is the prompt that I came up with. Again, we don't have to complicate this, but let's see what it comes up with. I might also ask it to pair this with a front end offer that naturally results in a conversation we can use to transition into the sales process of the main offer. So we could do something like that. So main offer, 90-day profit ranking turnaround sprint. I love 90-day sprints right now. Like, they are performing really, really well. It's a specific time frame, a specific result. They know exactly when, you know, what you're promising has been accomplished. And then, you know, they even add a guarantee performance based here. If we don't increase your tacos efficient revenue by at least 20% in 90 days, you don't pay the performance fee. That's interesting. But, you know, you could just say like you do it on a performance basis. That always ends up working. I would probably get it here to like summarize this into one line. We help Amazon brands increase, you know, tacos efficient revenue by at least 20% in 90 days. Cool. And then include the front end offer in one line.
All right, so here's the clean front end offer. We'll do a free tacos ranking recovery audit that identifies profit leaks, missed ranking opportunities, gives you a 10-day plan to fix them. Core offer, we increase your taco sufficient revenue by at least 20% in 90 days by boosting rankings, cutting wasted ad spend, and improving conversions, backed by a performance-based guarantee. Perfect. Now, nailing your offer obviously isn't always going to be as easy as it seems, because the reality is, to get data on whether or not it resonates with the audience that you're trying to target, you need to send thousands of cold emails, if not tens of thousands of cold emails. And most people just don't have the knowledge as to how to set that up. So if you want help crafting an offer that actually gets people to book calls with you, you can book a call with me below. We've helped clients book over 1,800 sales calls in the last year alone, and we'll see if we can do the same for you. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, just book a call below. But either way, once you nail down your offer, we need to focus on the first part of the actual script. And that's going to be getting people to open the email with a subject line that actually stands out. Because you could have the best email copy in the world, but obviously if they don't open it, then nobody's going to see it. Yet for some reason, people still use these templates that make it super obvious that it's a cold email, which is exactly why they get ignored. But the best subject lines, in my opinion, don't really look like cold emails at all. They're short, curiosity inducing, and look like they could have come from somebody internally. And that's exactly what makes people open them. So if we want to go back to some of our examples from the emails that I pulled, you can see here like YouTube appraisal proposal. The problem with this one is that they're telling you exactly what the offer is in the subject line. So there's no reason to open the email. If you're not looking for a YouTube proposal, you're not even going to open it. You're just going to delete that. They could have said YouTube idea or something like that. Like maybe if you're running YouTube, they have an idea for you. Or if you're not running YouTube, they have some sort of strategy to help you kickstart that. You don't really know what it's about. There's a little bit of curiosity there and you want to dive in and at least see what it is. Here, this is super marketing jargon focused, like boost your online visibility the authentic way. I don't know if I really need to elaborate on that one. This one, can it be achieved? So again, this one is curiosity inducing, but it's not clear enough. Like it doesn't, like what can be achieved. Like there's nothing that implies what it could potentially be about or like gets somebody curious. It's just vague, which is obviously not what we're going for. I would say even some of the good emails on the other side didn't have the greatest subject lines. This one I thought was all right. We found 55 of them, Aaron. The only reason I kind of like this one is that, they tell you that we found 55 of something, but you don't really know what it is. So you're going to want to look into that. It's a little conversational, not really marketing jargon focused. So I don't mind that one. But if we want to go back to like some of the examples that I showed you from our copy, Instagram question, it gives them an idea of what it's about, but not exactly. And then same deal with this one, capital stack question, gives them a rough idea of what it's about, but you want to ask them something. They kind of want to know what you're asking, whether or not they want it or not, or actually, are interested. They're at least going to look. Now, when it comes to spinning up subject lines with AI, we pretty much use a prompt that asks them to first analyze each email, identify main value prop, target audience, core benefit, specific outcomes, and then ensure that it's going to be curiosity inducing, 2 to 3 words maximum, all lowercase, super relevant, sounds like an internal communication, industry relevant, avoids obvious sales language, and then we listed a few different examples. And then pretty much all you have to do is take your offer, drop it in. You can see here, like we dropped some specific email copy, and then they gave us a couple options here, first name, Amazon data, real-time question. These ones are all right. You probably have to do some prompting, but it's pretty simple. And then every single subject line you come up with for each campaign is going to be unique. Now, at this point, you obviously have a subject line that's going to get them to open or read the email, but that's only really half the battle, because if your email doesn't immediately tell them what's in it for them, they're going to just jump on to the next one. Yet that's what people end up doing. They either talk too much, explaining too much why someone should be jumping on the call, or they just jump in asking for a call way too early. But the best email copy obviously does the opposite. It's short, leads with value, and actually gives them a reason to respond. Now, again, going back into the examples of some of the bad copy, it's going to be everything like, I hope this email finds you well, or like, I know you're busy, but blah, 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 blah. Like that's the first thing that's going to kill your email. Or in situations like this, jumping into who you are, who you work for, what you do, things like that. That's just like a complete no-go. Again, fake relevance. This is who I am. Should you be interested, I can send over a proposal. Like this is just jumping into the quote unquote like relationship way too soon. You know, that's like a clingy boyfriend that is just trying to jump in to second or third base way too fast. Like, why would I want a proposal or pricing structure? I have no idea what you're going to do for me. I have no idea what the quality of work is, you know, who you are, what you've accomplished, what's in it for me, anything like that. So that's big red flag. And then again, going to this one, you know, ripping apart somebody's YouTube channel is not going to make them want to work with you. Like, your channel subscriber is only 340 and you've already published 20 videos. The other thing too, like, you can tell he was trying to make this personalized, and he was using a personalization to pull my YouTube name, which has my company name in it, super non-conversational. But then for some reason he decided it would be smart to bold it, which makes it obvious that it's, you know, variable. So they bolded all of the personalizations, pulled those through, and then again saying, unfortunately, your channel is not performing well. Like, who's to say that? I think my channel is performing great, right? So they're kind of making assumptions based on data that they're seeing, and then just pitching their service. There's nothing in it for the reader at all. And then this one here is all over the place, you know, emojis, really disjointed. They try and paint some sort of picture, tell a story before getting into what they do. And nobody has the time or attention for any of that. And then again, jumping into the good emails, straight to the point. Like in this case, they did a really good job not even using the greeting. Like, you're just using first name. That could be a text, you know, like it's just this simple, casual, saw you're hiring for sales related roles, straight to the offer, you know, just getting exactly into it right off the bat. Can I send you this? You know exactly what you're getting out of it. And then if I were them though, I probably would have just left like the signature a little bit more plain, you know, just their name, maybe the company. This thing here, this is a little salesy. I would have avoided that. Thanks for the time. Again, a little salesy. You could have just said, Aaron, saw you're hiring for sales related roles. Can I send you 100 verified contacts that match your ICP? Thanks, Jenny. And then jumping into some of these other ones, obviously really good. You know, they emphasize the value here. Our AI agent spotted 55 intent-based prospects, and do you want me to send you how to do it? All of these, again, are just short. This one here even uses a bit of like a pattern interrupt. Thought you'd find this humorous. The other thing that's worth noting too is like the preview text is actually almost just as important as the subject line. So the subject line sure builds curiosity, but they're also going to read the subject line and read the preview. And that's that first section that they'll see in their inbox. So like if I saw this one here, thought you'd find this humorous, and that's the preview text, I'd be curious as to what he's talking about, right? And then again, jumping into the copy, it's literally just the offer and the CTA all in one line. That's perfect. Again, I'd probably cut out some of this crap. You know, you don't really need these little spin text quotes or opt-outs. That's really not necessary. And then, you know, the location, I wouldn't really go that direction. You don't need to let people know where you're from. If, you know, if you're reaching out to an American that hates Canadians and they see that you're from Canmore, Alberta, like maybe they don't answer to you, or vice versa. You know, if it's a Canadian that hates Americans and the Americans reaching, like, you don't want to bring your location or politics or anything into it. Just put your name, put your company name. You don't even really need your job title. Just super simple, catch their attention, drop the offer, clear CTA, bang. And then if you want to generate these types of emails for yourself, you know, something super clear is a lot easier to write good copy than it is to write hard copy, right? You saw some of those good copy examples. They're super short. It's just your offer. If you have your offer nailed, then that's all it is. You know, you just need to be clear about it. But what we've done to make it even easier is pull some of our top performing client campaigns and the copy that we use for them, put that into the project file for Claude, and then also added a bunch of frameworks. So these are going to be the exact structures that we found work really well for a lot of our clients. And then it's as simple as just pulling over the offers. So I actually pulled over the Amazon offer that we were looking at earlier, and then I asked them to create a bunch of examples of copy for the front end offers that were pulled. So you know, first name, interested in a free listing audit. I'd probably get rid of this for company name. I don't really like that at all. Where we review 3 of your top ASINs and show you exactly where you're losing visibility, conversions, and ranking opportunities. Like, that's perfect. I've been leaning away from using the PS line. Like, you can use the PS line for social proof, but I would almost focus on trying to make it a little bit more related to the front end offer. Like, instead of just like this random sales crap where you're like, yeah, we helped so-and-so do X, Y, and Z. I guess like they do tie it in a bit here, but saying like, using these exact optimization strategies, I would almost start with that, where it's like, this is exactly what we did for Lamson, and they actually, you know, scaled from 448 to 1 mil, and, you know, Sassy Sense achieved 220% year-over-year growth. My point with that one obviously is that like the line just needs to be relevant to the offer itself. And then again here, you know, interested in free keyword gap analysis, where we identify 20 high converting keywords for your competitors that your competitors are ranking for that you're missing, you know, easily. You know exactly what they're offering, what happens if you reply. It's just straight to the point, gets your attention automatically. So now that you know how to write email, you can't just send it once and hope for the best, because even if your first email is impossible to ignore, some people just won't see it the first time. You know, everyone's busy, everyone has a flooded inbox, and sometimes they just see it and they forget to respond. So if you want to actually be able to book calls, you need to be able to write follow-ups that people can't ignore. And once again, I'll show you a bad example, and then I'll show you one that works. So jumping back into the examples that I received here, this is probably one of the worst that I've seen. Again, like, I continue to say, like, we need to get to the point as fast as possible, but here they're saying, I've sent you a few emails but haven't received a reply. I'd prefer not to give up without a definitive yes or a clear idea of how we might connect. If you could just reply with one of the numbers and I'll take it from there. I really feel that we could substantially enhance your cold email strategies. I'm not trying to be a nuisance if you're not interested or the timing is bad. So first of all, you're reiterating the fact that they already ignored you at least one time, which makes them not want to respond. They're like, okay, like, this guy's following up saying, oh, I've sent a few emails. Clearly I ignored them for a reason. Why would I answer this guy this time? But look at all this fluff before it gets to like the point. And truthfully, like, if you do look at this email and you didn't see the first one, I have no idea what they're offering or what they're doing or who they, like, I have zero context. This is like implying that I'm going to take the time to scroll down in the thread and look at the other emails. So for me, like, obviously a good follow-up is going to build off of the first one, but still be something that can exist on its own, right? So if, you know, for example, they just do the one-line offer, what you might want to do in the follow-up, if you're shrinking down your piece of outreach into one line, obviously there's stuff that you weren't able to include. So, you know, jumping into the follow-up by adding in those things and like layering that on, or even just adding some sort of like risk reversal or some pre-handle of objections, is kind of the direction that I always like to go. But it's going to be the same deal as the first email, you know, short, to the point, conversational, but can exist on its own. Clear CTA, same idea, is the way that we want to look at that. So jumping into the good example here, you can see we have this first email from him. This is email 1. You know, if I took a net loss to bring you 2 full fee retainer clients, would you be interested? So that's a great first email. And then the follow-up. So I didn't really like that he said, recognize you're probably slammed, Aaron, but I did like that he used my first name further along in the sentence, which implies that, you know, maybe he could have written it himself. Like, it's super conversational. It looks like, you know, a DM rather than some salesy email. But the thing I did like a lot on this one was he went from pitching the offer in the first one to pitching a video in the second one. So let's take the heavier resistance CTA, the one that creates more friction, and offer it the first time. And then if someone doesn't answer to the high friction thing, offer something low friction. So now you're offering a 2-minute video to show, like, you know, like what this would consist of. And a lot of people will say yes to that, again, just because they're curious. They just want to see what it's about. So if you do create a really good video, like, you can almost have the video do the selling for you. And then if you want to run a prompt to really come up with something here, like, you know, it's not as difficult as it seems. Like I said, you're just including the details that you didn't include in the first email, because obviously the first email is going to be super short, and then jump into the second one. I just use this prompt here. What would be an effective way to follow up if we just wanted to layer on like one additional value point, or maybe overcome an objection, or pre-handle an objection, or just reiterate a key value prop? And then this is obviously referencing some of our you know, structure. So we always do like the also first name, thought it was worth mentioning. Like, this part here is super conversational. Goes back to that one example that I showed you guys where
the first name is not the first thing in the message, it's the second, so it looks like it could be a text. But again, like, it came up with a pretty decent risk slash overcome objection. So first name, thought it was worth mentioning that the audit's completely free with zero obligation. We only move forward if you see clear opportunities worth fixing. Most sellers we audit find at least 3 to 5 quick wins that they can implement immediately, even if they don't work with us. So that's pretty decent. And then this one here is pretty good as well. Thought it was worth highlighting that the audit requires 0 time from you. All you have to do is send us your ASINs. We're going to handle the rest. And then we found that most Amazon sellers leave 20 to 30% of potential revenue on the table from these simple listing fixes that they didn't know existed. That builds the pain a little bit and gives them a reason to want to jump in, because AI should make your life easier, not harder. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how I use AI to write cold email scripts without being some sort of crazy prompting wizard. And just to be clear, this works for any industry, any offer, and any business size. So no matter what type of business you run, you'll know exactly how to use AI to write cold emails by the end of this video. But before we even think about writing a single word, we need to nail down exactly who we'll be speaking to. Because if you're sending generic cold emails to business owners or marketing managers, it doesn't really matter how good your email copy is, it's just gonna get ignored. So diving in, for the sake of this video, I just picked a random company from one of the lead lists that we've used in the past, just so I can show you exactly what the process looks like from scratch without having any sort of background information on the company itself. So first thing you're gonna wanna do, obviously, is determine the company that you're going to be creating the email copy for, and then you're going to want to jump into Perplexity. So Perplexity is a tool that's obviously big for market research, and here we're going to be using it to come up with a campaign brief. So again, the prompts can be super simple. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated. All I did here was ask for a comprehensive outbound campaign brief for company URL, and then I listed what I wanted it to include. So in this case, to write the email copy with information that will actually help us get results, we need everything from the company's ideal customer profile, their geographical focuses, potential persona segments, including industry, job title, company size, pain points that each segment has, and then the most important thing is how the company can actually solve those pain points. So for the sake of this video, I actually just ran the prompt already to save some time. And as you can see here, this is kind of what we got as an output. So full overview, this is what they specialize in. These are their ideal customer profiles based on industry, company size, geographical focus, persona segments. It looks like it built us out 5. And then the pain points that each one of these segments will have and how the company is going to solve them. So that's going to be the important part. It also threw in a few things we didn't really ask for, like key differentiators, campaign messaging themes, and a summary for outbound targeting. This is all going to be good information when we continue to the next steps of the process. Now, if you want to book calls using cold email without having to constantly test which prospects to reach out to, you can book a call via the first link in the description. We've helped businesses like A. Newman and Associates book 32 calls in 30 days, Stroud book 24 calls and close 3 high-ticket deals in the first 30 days, and Relay Partners book 42 calls in the first 30 days. So if that's something you're interested in, you can book a call below. But now that we know who we're reaching out to, we need to figure out exactly what we're going to be offering them. And this is where most people completely mess things up, because they think their offer is, their main service, but your offer isn't, we send cold emails for you. It's the actual end result that the prospects want. Continuing to use the example of the revenue, I pulled this directly from their website. So it says, we help companies recover profit and operate more effectively. Super simple, kind of gets the point across about what they do, but hundreds of companies could say the exact same thing. A better example would be, we guarantee to recover a minimum of $500,000 in hidden profit leaks and supplier overpayments within 90 days through a proprietary contract compliance audit process, or you pay nothing. The reason why this is better is because it includes a quantifiable end result, it includes a definitive timeline, and it includes a risk reversal. Now, we even wanted to take it one step further, because as much as these kind of quote unquote like Hormozi style no-brain offers worked amazing, there's a little bit of doubt in some of the guarantees and things like that, depending on the audience that you're reaching out to. So what we did here is actually create what I think is a great example, to be honest. And that is one where you actually don't pay anything up front, and you're only charging a percentage of the money that you actually save the prospects. The reason why this works is because, one, it has a lot of the same features of this good example up here. They know exactly what they're getting in terms of a time frame. We kind of took the specific amount out, the quantifiable end result, and we did that because, depending on who you're reaching out to, that number can mean a lot of different things. But the big kicker here is that, they only get paid a percentage of what we actually recover for you, and there's no upfront fees. So there's literally no reason why a company wouldn't say yes to this, at least to some degree. Now, instead of thinking this all through myself for our cost reduction client, I'm actually going to stick it into Claude and have it come up with 10 different variations for us. So again, sticking to the theme of keeping the prompt simple, I just said, I want you to come up with 10 different cold outbound offer variations for company name. I detailed what a good offer generally includes. So implies, includes, or contains a quantifiable end result, risk reversal, or guarantee. Again, these don't always need to be obvious or literal. Sometimes they can be implied. And then I said, I also want you to include front-end offers, like service-based lead magnets, audits, introduction services that can be included at a low or no cost, as these kind of serve the same purpose as the above. And then I also asked about potential asset-based lead magnets and included the campaign brief from Perplexity. So if you just go back to Perplexity, copy and paste what you have here and drop it in to Claude, we'll give them a little bit of context so they can create these ideas. So again, for the sake of this video, I already ran the prompt, but this is what the output looks like. So analyzes the data and pulls these together. Essentially, we have things like a free vendor payment error assessment, a 30-day contract compliance audit, an energy vendor audit, and that was all under service-based lead magnets or front-end offers. And then quantifiable result offers, we have a $1 million recovery guarantee, a 10x ROI promise, zero risk profit recovery. So this one was with the zero upfront cost, zero risk. And then we have asset-based lead magnets. So, a proprietary Gain IQ analytics report, contract compliance checklist. Some of these are going to be great. Some of them are going to be iffy, but the idea is you have a bunch of things to work from and you're not just having to think of it yourself. And then they even came up with some hybrid offers here that include both. So again, tons of stuff to work with, and it'll definitely help us with the next steps. So now we're going to write the cold email using Claude, but we can't just go into this one with basic prompts like we did for the last few if you actually want to get a solid output. So let me show you the exact context structure that we use to get AI to write cold emails that actually sound human. So diving in here, I found that the key is actually project knowledge. So providing it enough examples of your most recent campaigns that actually performed well. If you have a document like this where you have a bunch of frameworks that have actually performed really well or that you've seen other companies perform well, I would include that as well. And then again, we can keep things super simple on the prompt side of things because we're providing it this context. So all I asked was create an initial email and follow up for a campaign via the following offers. And again, we pulled these offers, copied and pasted from this project over to the email copy prompt. So we're providing that context there. And then again, after including the offers and the basically output from the previous prompt, we also included the brief that we got from Perplexity. So again, you're inputting the project knowledge. So that's your previous copy examples, frameworks that you use, things like that. That's going to be super important. Include the offers themselves and then include the brief from Perplexity. And then again, for time's sake, I'm just going to have this already run. And you can see the output here. Essentially, we have a couple good emails and they're all done with the varying different offers. So this is that free vendor payment error assessment. First name recorded a quick video covering the vendor payment error analysis we implemented for a Fortune 500 manufacturing client, which led to recovering $750,000 in overpayments in their first audit. So that's a pretty good one. Came up with the follow-up as well. Generally, with our follow-ups, we like to do this casual approach, add anything that didn't fit in the first email, include social proof, different things like that that weren't involved initially. We have another one here for the 30-day contract compliance, energy vendor audit, $1 million recovery guarantee. And again, not all of these are going to be perfect, but the idea here is it's giving us a really solid start. So we have something to work from. We can easily tweak and manipulate things after, but it really just provides that ideation that makes this process super fast. But even the best script in the world means nothing if you can't send it at scale and optimize on what's working. So here's exactly how we build the infrastructure to hit 1,000 sends per day without landing in the spam folder. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go over to Porkbun or whatever preferred domain provider you have and purchase 50 lookalike domains. And then you're going to want to create 100 sending accounts from those 50 lookalike domains using a Google reseller such as, premium inboxes or cheap inboxes. I'd also recommend balancing it out with some Outlook accounts as well, which you can use something like, Hypertide or Mailer for. Obviously with these, you're going to want to run your 2-week warm-up and again, split between Google and Microsoft to mitigate risk. So once you have your email accounts warmed up and ready to go, you're going to want to create a plan for sequential testing. So what I would do is I would focus on testing the various different personas that you've created while pairing those with the various different pain points across, almost looking at it like a matrix with the offer that best suits the pain point that they are experiencing. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can do this, but obviously you want to look at it almost scientifically. So only changing one variable per test, just so you can effectively tell which variable is causing the, whether it's a negative or positive outcome, and then make changes accordingly. When it comes to metrics to shoot for, once you've launched your campaigns, I would look out for anything from a 2% reply rate to a 20% positive reply rate, and then a 50% meeting book rate on those interested responses. And then from there, all you have to do is maintain that 1,000 sends per day, and you should be able to get some pretty good data in just under 2 weeks. Now that we have our raw CSV, we need to pull it into Clay and clean it up. Because as good as it is, Apollo data tends to be pretty messy. Company names often have LLC in them or Inc., or in some cases we're even missing emails or other crucial data. So if you try to just use this data as is, your emails will obviously come off a little bit sloppy, maybe unprofessional, or you just won't have the information that you need. And this is where Clay really starts showing its value, because we're going to use it to find the missing data, normalize the data that we do have, and verify all of our emails at scale. So jumping into Clay here, you can see all you pretty much have to do is import via CSV, and pull your list in. Once you have your list in here, you're going to want to do a few things. So you can see here we've got Inc., LLC, etc. on company names that we don't want. So we're just going to normalize that real quick. So I pretty much just went in, insert column, add enrichment, normalize company. And you can see here, I just ran this enrichment on every single one of the rows. And the result here is a far cleaner output. There's obviously some other things that you can use as well if you use these variables in the copy. We don't, so we don't usually take it too far other than this, but we'll leave it at that for now. And then the next thing that I want to do is find the missing email. So we'll go filter, add filter, email is empty, to find all of the emails that are missing. These are contacts that we had the first name, last name, company name, so on and so forth for in Apollo, but Apollo just didn't have their email. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a waterfall in order to leverage different data providers to find those emails. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to go insert column, search, work email, and then we're going to create a waterfall. So essentially what this is going to do is going to search a bunch of different data providers sequentially until you find the email that you need. You can jump into full configuration here to choose which sequencer or which sequence the providers are used, and you can reorganize them here, leverage the ones that you have API keys for, or use Clay data if you don't have a necessary API. So you pretty much just want to map your fields here, company name, normalize company name, ensure that all is good. And then I generally turn validation off. We don't want to validate with these providers because we're going to use our own. So again, you can see here, there's a couple that we do have API keys for. We're going to want to use those first. And then the ones that we don't, we'll list after. And then you're pretty much just going to, once you've decided which ones you want to use, the providers that you think are best, I'm going to click save and I'm going to click run. Okay, so as you can see here, we're pretty much running it through each one of the providers sequentially until we find a email. And then you can see as it finds the email here, it basically stops and doesn't continue running, and then ultimately merges all of the found emails into one column. Now, once you've merged all of your emails together, you pretty much just want to verify those to make sure that the emails that you're reaching out to will actually be able to receive emails in the first place. So for us, we use Million Verifier, and you can see we have it hooked up here via HTTP API. And this is a good way to leverage APIs within Clay if Clay doesn't have a native plugin for it. So in this case, Million Verifier does not, but we always use it here. You pretty much just have to pull your API key here, use a GET request, and then it basically returns whether or not it is verified. All right, so then from here, you pretty much want to go to filter, add filter, and then we want result is equal to OK. And this is going to show us all of the emails that were validated. So 900 of the 1540 were actually emails that will be able to receive some sort of outreach without bouncing. Once we have that set, that's when we can get into the fun stuff with personalization, because obviously you don't want to personalize a bunch of emails that you can't even deliver to in the first place. Now, if you want to generate leads without spending hours building clay tables or learning all of these tools yourself, you can apply to work with us via the first link below. We've built this entire system for our clients and we've used it to book over 2,000 sales calls in the last year. Just like one of our clients who booked 42 calls in just 30 days. So if you want to see if we can do the same for you, apply to work with us below and we'll chat soon. But either way, enriching your data is just the start. Next, you obviously need to use that information to stand out from the thousands of other cold emailers out there. And that's where personalization comes in. See, in 2025, cold email is more competitive than ever. And I imagine it's just going to get worse going into 2026. Everyone's just sending these generic messages and truthfully, like prospects can spot them from a mile away. So if you want to get responses, you obviously need to know who exactly you're talking to and what exactly it is that they want. But finding that information manually, going through every single prospect sequentially on your own would just take ages. And that's obviously where Clay comes in again, because instead of doing any of the research manually, Clay can personalize data on thousands of leads at once. All right, so now I'm going to show you how we use Claygen to come up with personalizations, do some market research on every single prospect, and even come up with, conditional logic for situations where maybe certain information isn't available. So in this first one, we wanted to pull the client's or the prospect's case study. So essentially, if a person was doing it manually, we'd go to this person's website, look at their case study section, look at different sections about their results, and then determine, what their best case study was or who their most desirable client would be. And we did this because if we're pitching a solution that helps them find people like their best client, that's obviously going to be super desirable for them and obviously relevant. So what we did was insert a column, add enrichment, and then we said use AI. Essentially, we wanted to write out our prompt here. So basically, we told them exactly what we are looking for. So I want to go to each prospect's website and find their top performing case study. And you can literally keep it as simple as that. Obviously, you can go into some prompting jujitsu and there's a ton of ways to really optimize this, but Clay's made it easy that you can literally just type what you want, click generate, and they're going to sculpt your prompt. So again, I've already done this, but I want to show you the exact process here and what it would look like. So you can see here it gives context, the objectives, the instructions, and then conditional logic. So, if this doesn't exist, how it should be validating it, what the output should look like, so on and so forth. And then what you're going to want to do here when it comes to Claygen, you can use web research or create or modify content. Web research is going to be more expensive because you're actually searching the web for things. Create or modify contents can be super cheap because you're just manipulating data that you already have. So in situations that you have like a company description, you can often use this to come up with some interesting prompts. But this is essentially what it's going to look like. You'll probably want to jump down to like 4.0 mini or 4.1 nano. Those are the two that we're kind of seeing work really well. I usually stick with the trusty 4.0 mini, and then you're going to want to run that. Usually what it ends up working out to, and I'll just cancel this one here. Usually what it ends up working out to is something like 0.001 per row that you run. So you can obviously do the math, that times 900. And then if you run multiple personalizations, it's really not that expensive. The one thing that I want to show you though in this prompt that I put together is to essentially come up with this conditional logic. So if no specific names are found, I want to identify the industry that they focus on, or rather the services that they focus on. So you can see here in this situation, we found a bunch of prospects and the response is now prospects like Vexel or prospects like Akatsuki. But you can see here in this situation, we weren't able to find any sort of case studies. So instead of saying prospects like your best case study, we use prospects looking for branding services. So it accomplishes a very similar level of relevance, but without having the information that is available. In other situations, maybe we run the prompt and then we create this logic where if the information was found, we run this version of the copy. If the information was not found, we run another version of the copy. But we wanted to keep it all simple in one prompt here, just to kind of tidy that up. I also want to add a formula. So you can see here, there's some situations where there's a period at the end, some situations where there's not. And we want to be able to use this in a sentence, right? So we want this to be a variable in our email copy. So what I'm going to show you how to do here too is just create a quick formula. And formulas is a great way to manipulate text without using AI in any way. So this costs you $0. So I often use it to, you can see here the example, get someone's first name from a full name, or create a full name from first name and last name. Just basically manipulating data that you already have and changing it around. So in this case here, we want to take the response. So insert formula. I want you to format response, this one here, so it can be used in email copy. Basically just remove any punctuation at the end. And then we're gonna, again, generate formula. You don't have to be crazy with this. Just tell them what you want. It'll come up with it. And you can see here, boom, looks good on this side. All the punctuation is removed, and that's your clean output. And again, you can use that for anything. That's just one of the many applications. And then on top of that, we also wanted to find the specific industry that they worked within. So you can see here, again, we just went to Claygent, ran for mini. I want you to take the input, determine which industry the company in this table primarily serves, browse the website, determine what sort of industry based on normalized name and website URL. This one we didn't use Clay's prompt for. I can't remember why I didn't do this, but essentially I just wanted it to be very, very specific. We obviously got a bunch of results here, but then now you can see there are some that we didn't. So what I want to do here is come up with a conditional logic for situations that we don't have it. And what I want to show you here too is Clay's new tool called Sculptor. So Sculptor is going to help us do whatever we want within Clay. Basically, anything that you want to solve, you can pretty much just type it in here and it's going to show you how to do it. So I'm going to tell them my exact situation. I ran a personalization for a piece of copy and some of the results didn't have data. Can you help me create a conditional logic so that we can run an alternative for those without data? The ones without data would be those that returned no in target industry. Cool. And again, this is in beta, so we'll see what it comes up with. I definitely think this is going to be a valuable tool going forward, so I just wanted to showcase this just a little bit to see what it can come up with for you guys. So you can see here, if target industry equals no, some options: run a different AI prompt, use a fallback value like a generic industry or service description, pull from another existing field, run a different enrichment. Based on your table, I notice you already have case studies field, which either case study company names, or would you like to use that as your fallback when, or we want a new enrichment? Let's see if it can even come up with the idea for us. So I maybe gave it a little bit too much credit, but let's just try a different approach. So now it's actually going to look at the prompt that I used for client industry and target industry and come up with a new prompt to be able to find this in a different way. Awesome. So now it's pretty much come up with a solution for us, basically a conditional logic that only targets the ones that said no and then looks for them in a different way. So you can see here, it gives me the option to set up the column. I'm going to click yes. And it's even got the conditional logic baked in, which is awesome. Only run if target industry equals no. And I like this. Again, I'm just going to switch it to 4.0 mini. We're going to save, and I'll just run it on the first 10 rows and we'll see what happens. As you can see here, the conditional logic was not met for all of these, but we'll try it here. And perfect. You can see that it worked exactly as we would have expected. So now there are no situations where we don't have data, and at least has its best guess in that situation. And we're set to use all of these variables in the copy. So now at this point, you just want to download your CSV or send to your sequencer of choice, anything from SmartLead, Instantly, Email Bison, so on and so forth, line it up with the campaign, and you're good to go. See, instead of just relying on a chain of emails, I use a 3-step strategy across multiple different channels. And my favorite part about the whole thing is that most of it's automated. This way I can reach out to the same person in multiple different ways without having to spend hours doing it. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it works and how you can get the data to do it for half the cost. Now, when it comes to sending follow-ups, most people think it's just about sending, more emails. But after booking over 1,500 calls in the last year, I've learned that it doesn't just come down to sending more volume. It comes down to reaching people in multiple ways. So you start with email to get their attention, you call when you get their reply, and then you use LinkedIn so that they know who you are. Now, to make this work, we have to do it all in the right order, because it's not as effective to call or connect with people if they haven't even answered your first email in the first place. So the first thing we need to build out is our automated email process. And that all starts with the first line. So you can see in this case, We ran a campaign to private equity firms. We used an AI personalization for the first line. And this leveraged something that we like to call the Trojan horse strategy. So without going too much into it, we leveraged a first line that asked them a question that we knew was true. So based on the information on your website, it seems like you're primarily investing in category defining companies, leveraging blockchain that distribute multi-billion-dollar markets. Still true? We ask this question while we know it's true. If so, we may be able to find X, Y, and Z for you. The idea being here, we ask them a question that we know is true, and then we allude to some sort of value or insights that we may have that they want. The most important things to focus on here are 1, keeping it short, 2, keeping it relevant, and 3, providing some sort of value or insights. But sending emails is only really half the battle, because most people get a reply to their email and then they wait hours to reply back. And that completely kills the momentum that they just built. So we always aim to reply within 5 minutes of a lead showing interest. And we do this by leveraging automations via webhook. So as you can see here, every single time we receive an interested response, our sales rep receives a notification with information about the campaign, the company that responded, the conversation, the email, LinkedIn, mobile phone number, and website of the prospect. Once they receive this notification, they know it's important to get into the inbox and get that reply sent out. To get this set up, we use a series of webhooks from our email sending tool that allows us to send data over to a tool like Clay or Slack or anything like that once a trigger is hit. So in this case, we set up a trigger specifically for when a contact is interested, as you can see here, and then that pushes the data to Clay. We then enrich for the information that we need and send that back to Slack so our sales rep can see it. Now, if you want us to set up an entire system without you having to learn to set up webhooks or enrichment tools or anything like that, you can book a call below. We'll build you an entire outbound system that targets your ideal customer so that you can start booking sales calls within just 30 days, which is exactly what we did for Relay partners who ended up booking 42 calls in the first month. So if you want that entire system built for you, you can book a call below. But either way, sending and replying to emails is just the start, because you can have perfect emails, but if that's all you're sending, you're leaving a lot of potential on the table. And that's where we add phone calls into the mix. But it's not as efficient to just dial every single person on your list. You need to be calling the right people at the right time. So here's how we do it. So going back to the automated message that our sales rep receives, you can see here that we've automatically enriched for mobile number and we've created it as a link. So all they have to do is click this button to call the prospect. All right, so once the call goes through, there's pretty much 2 possibilities. Either the person answers or the person doesn't. If the person doesn't answer, we leave a quick voicemail that says, "Hey Jeff, this is Daniel with Growth Flare. Saw your email just now to my boss Aaron about offer, whatever that is. Shoot me a call back when you can. Happy to provide some more information." Cool. If they do answer, it's very similar, but we say something along the lines of this. So it goes, "Jeff, question mark." And this is kind of pattern interrupts. Like most people say, "Hey, this is blah, blah, blah with XYZ." But the idea here is just by saying their name, question mark, you're going to get them to respond. They're going to say yes. And it generally interrupts what most cold calls or warm calls end up looking like. Then we go something along the lines of like, "Hey Jeff, this is Daniel with Growth Flare. You answered an email from my boss Aaron about offer. Does that sound familiar? Awesome. There's only a couple of slots left on his calendar for this week, but would a quick intro on, Tuesday at 1 or Wednesday at 3 EST work for you?" If they say, "Sure, let's chat," we'll basically jump into the situation where it's like, "Great, just so we can make sure the chat's efficient and relevant. Mind just answering a couple questions prior to me booking this in?" Then we'll generally just put them through a few qualification questions. If they're really short for time, sometimes we'll skip these, but in most cases, it's really valuable for the person who's taking the call to have this information to know whether the call is even worth the time. Then we'll have the sales rep book them directly into Calendly, so they'll go on to the client's calendar or whoever's taking the sales call. In the opposite situation where, they say something along the lines of like, "Send more information," or they're trying to like defer or like push back, we'll say, "For sure, Jeff, and was there anything in specific you were looking to get more information about?" The idea here is that we can figure out what the objection truly means. Like, is this something where they just don't have time and they just want to like push it off and make you send more info, or is there actually something that they're interested in hearing about? In this case, we always try to have our sales rep almost play innocent, I guess is the best way to put it, like almost act as if they don't have all of the answers, because if they did have all of the answers, then the call wouldn't be necessary that you're trying to book for the client. So in this case, I would say, "Got it. I'd say XYZ, like basically they provide their opinion on the objection or the thing that they're looking to get more information about. But I imagine Aaron would give you a better answer." So that's just implying that, if you have time to chat with me or the client or whoever's taking the sales call, you might get better information to make a better decision rather than just asking the sales rep. And then we go, instead of just sending you over a generic question and answer PDF, do you have 15 minutes on Tuesday? And I can just tell him or her that you want to focus on, that specific pain point that they mentioned. The idea here is that we're almost like reducing sales resistance. So instead of like saying, oh yeah, I'll book this sales call with you, it's like, yeah, let's just have this quick 15-minute intro. We'll just quickly talk about that one piece of information you want and then see if it even makes sense after that. And then from there, there's a few different scenarios. Obviously, sure, let's chat, bumps you back into this side. And then I don't really have time. Then you could just do something along the lines of like, okay, no problem. I'll send over X, Y, Z right after this call. The one thing I do like doing is I'm also going to throw a short touch point on the calendar a few weeks from now as a reminder to follow up. Does that work for you? So that way you have a meeting booked on the calendar with that person at a given time. There's a chance they show up for it. And if they don't, then it's another opportunity to reach out. But the reality is that these phone calls only really work when the prospects answer. And most of the time they don't pick up phone calls from numbers that they don't recognize. So how do you actually get them to pick up the phone when you call? Well, you make sure that they know who's calling. And that's where LinkedIn comes in. Because when you engage with prospects on LinkedIn first, you're not a stranger anymore. See, these little interactions can actually go a long way. And when you combine this with email, they're actually way more likely to pick up the phone and book a call. And here's how we set this up. So as you can see here, we're in HeyReach, which is an automated LinkedIn sending tool. And essentially what we have happen is another webhook goes off when we receive an interested response. That webhook pushes the data from our email sending tool to Clay, and then from Clay into HeyReach. And HeyReach adds it to a specific campaign. The campaign sends a connection request, and then there are a few other things that happen as well. Now, there are tons of ways that you can tackle this, different strategies involved. We always send the connection request without any sort of message. We find over the thousands of connections that we've sent, that's always the best way to get the acceptance. And then we have a few other things like viewing profile, liking posts, just little things that make it look human and less robotic. That way, there's a higher chance of them actually accepting the connection. So as you can see here, they kind of follow through this. If the person accepts, nothing happens after that. There's obviously other types of campaigns that you can create in HeyReach that involve messages and those types of things, but we like to take a far more passive approach with it because nobody likes being sold to. And the reality is if you end up getting this connection request and you're leveraging a strategy that involves content or just like general authority building, your content is going to be pushed to every single person that you connect with for the first couple of weeks. So it ends up becoming this almost like natural way to increase their familiarity with you and the odds of them actually booking in later. Now you can automate this entire LinkedIn process, but here's the thing. You need to ensure you have their LinkedIn URL so you can actually set it up. And depending on where you're creating your lead list, you don't always have the LinkedIn URLs lying around. So that's where data enrichment comes in to fill those gaps. And it's what's actually going to allow us to warm call our leads and connect with them on LinkedIn. Because without this step, the others are pretty much useless. So as you can see here, every single interested response we get pushes from our email sequencer into Clay. And we use Clay as a hub to enrich all of the information that we need for the various different touch points. So as you can see here, this webhook is received, and that's specifically coming from our sending tool. It shares the campaign name, first name, last name, full name, company name if we have it, email, and then LinkedIn profile URL. So this specifically is where we're enriching for the LinkedIn profile if it's not already, attached to the lead. So there's some situations where we already have it. There's some situations where we need to enrich for it. But as you can see here, we just run a quick prompt with Claygen. And essentially what we're doing here is pulling the full name and company name from our information that we already have, and then looking for a LinkedIn URL with the pattern linkedin.com/in. And that's just generally how LinkedIn sets it up. And there's a few steps here. Obviously, it's going to look for a few different places, run a couple Google searches, and then if it doesn't find it, it's going to return no LinkedIn profile found. Once we have that, obviously it's going to be shared here. We have their website, the email body. So this is what's shared into Slack. Again, these all kind of work in tandem together to push all the information necessary to our sales rep, but also our clients and other people that need access to the information. So they get context on what the interested response looks like. We then extract the raw email body with ChatGPT, and then this is what shares into Slack. That way it's just clean. It's literally just the response, not like all of the headings or the previously threaded emails or anything like that. So once we have all of the information we need, we're running what's called a waterfall enrichment to be able to find phone numbers. So we've got LinkedIn, we've got the first name, we've got last name, full name, company name, website, so on. Now we can jump into pulling the numbers. And as you can see here, what it does is specifically run from one provider to another sequentially to try and find the data that we need. You can order these however you like. However, we always give preferential treatment to the ones that we actually have API keys for. So then we're able to pull this information without using Clay credits. Given that, this is only being used on interested leads, it's a little more efficient on credits than just running a massive list of prospects you don't even know are interested, and generally more worth it, again, because we know that there's intent there. So as you can see, as it goes through, if it finds the phone number on the first one, then it stops looking for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on. We also have a merge here, so it pulls all of the mobile numbers together, and then we run a quick formula so that the phone number is essentially formatted in a way that allows our sales rep to just click the button in Slack. This again saves us time because remember, going back to speed to lead, it's one of the most important things when it comes to actually getting the meeting booked. So if our sales rep has to, manually type in a phone number every single time an interested response comes in, it's going to drastically reduce, or I guess rather increase, the speed to lead, which is not a good thing. So by being able to just click the button, it makes it so much easier. We can get to the call fast. Awesome. Next, once we have that, we're sending all the information into Slack. So I'll show you real quick what we have here. Essentially, it pulls the Slack channel that it's going into, shares the new lead updated to interested, email, phone number, company name, website, campaign name, LinkedIn profile, first name, last name, email response. That all goes into Slack, as I showed you guys before, to get something like this. And then the last thing is pushing prospects into HeyReach. And again, we do this in Clay in a very simple way. So now that we have all of the information on the other end, we're pulling this in, sharing which campaign we want the lead to get added to, first name, last name, LinkedIn URL, company name, email address, so on. Again, all this does is push it back into that HeyReach sequence in order to send the connection request to the person that showed interest. Because everyone teaches you how to send cold emails, write the perfect scripts, and get replies, but nobody really teaches you what to do after that, which means even though you're getting interested responses, you might not actually be booking any calls from that. Or even worse, you end up booking calls, but nobody ever shows up. See, after booking 2,000 calls in the last 12 months, I can tell you that getting the interested response is just the beginning. And the reality is what happens next could really make or break your outreach. And that's why in this video, I'm going to show you everything from follow-ups to pre-call automations, so you have leads showing up that are ready to buy. Now, most people think follow-ups are just about, sending more emails. But sending 10 emails one after another really just comes off as desperate and pushy. And in some cases, no matter how many you send, they may not even end up in the person's inbox. Or they may end up seeing them and then just forget to respond. So instead of just relying on one channel to reach out to our leads, we use a 3-step strategy that includes email, LinkedIn, and phone. And then these end up keeping us top of mind without spamming them with just a bunch of emails. And here's how we set it up. So the first thing is going to be the meeting request subsequence. So this is just your basic follow-up emails if someone shows that they're interested in the inbox and they don't book a meeting right away. So we'll add them to the sequence, and it'll pretty much just be 3 steps of reminders, case studies, different things that just kind of reinforce the reason why they showed that they were interested. And even before that, we set up webhooks to get notifications whenever interested responses come through so that we're able to respond within 5 minutes, and that all goes through Slack. Now, that same webhook that gives us a notification in Slack also enriches each prospect for their mobile phone number. So as you can see here, we're running a waterfall enrichment in Clay to pull the prospect's phone number so that we have the best phone number to reach out to them. And it also formats it in a way that allows us to just click the phone number in Slack and call that person right away with whichever phone platform we have set up. And you can see that here, pretty much hover over it, you can call mobile. And for us, that goes through Zoom at the moment. When it comes to dialing, we're usually trying to dial those that are, pretty much interested and ready to get on a call. And the only next step is just to schedule something in. So find a time that works for both of you. And the idea behind using phone rather than going back and forth over email is just that it's less resistance. It's a little bit quicker. You already know that they're interested, and it just takes the effort out of their hands and puts it into your own. If you do end up warm calling your leads, the flow generally looks something like this. So obviously if there's an answer, You can say, hey, first name, this is SDR, or if this is you, you can say this is your name with client company. You answered my email from so-and-so about offer. Does that sound familiar? Awesome. So there's just a couple of slots left on the calendar for this week. Would a quick chat on day 1 at time 1 or day 2 at time 2 work for you? And then obviously there's a flow that follows from that, different scenarios if people say different things. And if there's no answer, obviously that's when you can kind of leave a voicemail. Almost the same thing, but just asking them to shoot you a call back. Happy to provide more information. And then you can go ahead with responding to them via email as well. So you kind of have both sides of the coin working in your favor. In the case that they pick up, obviously there's 100 different scenarios that could occur with the phone call. But if this is an SDR that's doing the calling for you, you just want them to be as prepared as possible. Have a bunch of answers to a bunch of different scenarios pre-templated, so you know how to handle objections or different information requests. And then otherwise, just do what you can to defer the call to the person that has more information if they don't have that answer. So you can see here, like in the send more info chain for this one, the answer goes a little bit like, for sure, first name, was there anything in specific you're looking to get more information about? And then when they ask for that more information, got it, I'd say, X, Y, and Z. So just give like a brief answer, just kind of appease their objections so you're not ignoring them. And then say, but I imagine client's name. So in this case, like Aaron could give you a better answer instead of just sending you over some generic Q&A PDF that doesn't really answer your question. Maybe you could just find 15 minutes to chat with him on Tuesday. And I can tell him or her that you wanted to focus on like this particular area. That way it's more of like proposing a value call. Like, this is a problem you have or an objection you want to overcome. And he's actually willing to take 15 minutes of his time to sit down with you and just, cover that. And then there's obviously a few different directions that can go as well. And then lastly, there's LinkedIn. So within this automation, obviously we're enriching for phone number, we're sending a Slack message, but we're also adding the leads to a HeyReach campaign. So if you haven't heard of HeyReach, it's essentially a automated LinkedIn outbound tool. And in this case, we have a super simple flow set up for those that show interest. So anytime an interested response comes through, they get added to this campaign through Clay, and then we send them a connection. So the idea here obviously is that you're kind of bridging the gap between email and phone and showing your face, giving them an idea of who you are, the experience that you have. Obviously, LinkedIn is always going to be littered with social proof, content, different things like that they can kind of see if perhaps they're a little bit on like the low trust side. Now, if you want to set up this entire system without having to learn webhooks, enrichment tools, and the strategies behind it all, you can book a call via the first link below. We'll build an entire outbound system for you that targets your ideal customers and books qualified calls on your calendar in just 14 days, which is exactly what we did for TripAdvisors, who booked 45 calls in their first 45 days. So again, if you want that entire system built for you, you can book a call below. But either way, we need to cover the next part of the process, because what most people do is they book these leads directly on the calendar without any sort of qualification. But obviously not every single interested person is going to be a fit for what you're offering. And if you're letting just anyone book a meeting with you, you're going to be wasting hours on calls with people who can't or won't ever really buy from you. So instead, we use a pre-call form which filters out bad leads before they ever even really take up our time. So you could pretty much do this on like Calendly, or you can do it on Typeform. Really, it doesn't really matter too much. We do it on Calendly just because it's fairly simple, lower resistance, and only really one platform instead of two. In this case, you can kind of see we're adding a few different layers of resistance. So our best fit clients have established product market fit, existing social proof or case studies, or a target audience of at least 50K prospects. When someone goes to book on my calendar and they see this, and maybe they don't fit one of these criteria, the odds of them booking is going to be less, which obviously makes it easier for me to have qualified calls with people that fit that criteria. And then once they do find a time, obviously you're going to want to make sure you have a bunch available. But once they go in, we're going to be asking them everything from their website, make sure that they're an established business, their phone number. So obviously you can do some mobile outreach. I always like to ask where they came from because we have a multi-channel strategy for marketing. I ask average monthly revenue. I ask their typical deal size. So we don't want to be working with people that have like a $30 a month SaaS company, because it just doesn't work in our situation. And then sometimes I'll ask what they're most interested in, because we have multiple different offers. Usually for most clients, we end up keeping this to like 2 or 3 questions just to maximize qualification and minimize resistance. But with everything, it ends up being a game of levers where if you end up having some poor fit leads, you can increase the resistance, or if you're not getting enough calls, you can reduce the resistance. Rule of thumb though, you usually want to qualify for like the typical BANT structure. So budget, can they afford what you're selling? Authority, are they the right person? Need, like, are they actually trying to solve the thing that you solve? And timing, like, is this something that's going to be now or a year from now? And then after they book in, they'll land on a post-booking confirmation page, which I'll explain in the next section. We'll go through their answers, determine if they're a good fit, and then if not, either cancel or reschedule, or maybe just reach out to them individually to see if there's, more intent than what their answers really kind of imply. Now, at this point, most people think that if they have qualified calls on their calendar, they're just kind of good to go. But even with the best follow-up system and qualification process, you're still bound to have people ghost you because there's so much that can happen between a prospect booking the call and then the actual call itself. Maybe they end up forgetting why they're interested. Maybe they found new information about similar services online, or maybe they just get busy with other priorities. And then by the time the call rolls around, they just don't show up. And this is exactly why you need a pre-call process that keeps you top of mind, even gets them excited, answers their questions, objections, and everything before they even get on the phone with you. That way, each person you get on a call with is actually a lot more open to buying from you. And even though this seems super complicated, it's actually pretty easy to set up and you only really have to do it once. So I'll show you a quick example of our confirmation page. Essentially what happens is once they book in, they're automatically redirected to this page. You might want to include this even in an email that goes out automatically because some people miss out on the redirect. But essentially, you're going to want to really pull them into the first video. The first video is going to sell the rest of the page. Essentially, what you're going to do is lay out what the confirmation page is for, why you put it together, what the purpose is, and where the value is. And you want to keep this as short as possible. Like, I think mine is just under 2 minutes. If you could get it down to 1 minute, even better. And again, like the idea here is just setting the expectations, creating an image of value, and just showing why it's beneficial for them to go through all of these videos prior to your conversation. In many cases, like you're nurturing them, so they end up being a better conversation when the call happens. But at the same time, you're also helping them save time if they go through all the information and find out that it's not a fit. And then you're going to jump into the Q&A videos. Usually the best practice with this is to answer all of the most frequently asked questions that you get on sales calls. You can even go into something like ChatGPT, throw all of your call transcripts in there and ask them what the biggest objections are, what the most frequently asked questions are, and just answer them really quickly in a video. So for us, it's like, what does your process work? What's included in your team? What industries does this work for? How long do we wait till we see results? What's the typical investment? How do you ensure quality? So on and so forth. And this will be different for every single offer. On top of that, this is optional, but you can include things like case studies, just social proof in case maybe the prospect hasn't seen these on your main landing page. And the reason why these videos are so important is that it takes your sales calls from a education session. Maybe the first call ends up being educating the prospect. Second call ends up being the sales process, overcoming objections, really mapping out what it looks like for them. Whereas if they've already consumed all of this content, you can really just get down to business on that first call, ensure that it's a fit with your discovery, and then give them any sort of details that they weren't able to see in the initial videos, which usually maybe is only like 20% of the potential questions that could be asked. And those are often those that are very specific to their industry or to their offer. Oftentimes this ends up eliminating the I need to think about it objection when you get to the end of the sales call. And then after someone's filled out the qualification form, they've checked out the confirmation page, this is when you bring in your pre-call nurture and reminder emails. So usually when it comes to our reminders, we have 2 sections. So there's those that are going to be automated and those that are going to be manual. On the automated side, you're going to have nurture. So that's content that actually fills in gaps, accomplishes a lot of similar things as the confirmation videos, but maybe just, paints the picture a little bit more. And then you're going to have reminders. So that's just your typical like, hey, you know what, this call's in 4 hours, don't forget kind of thing. So you see here on the nurture side, we start day 1 with a case study. This breaks down a scenario. So day 2, we have problem amplification. And this is where we're really trying to dial in what the issue is that most people are dealing with when they come to us, and making it clear that doing it on their own isn't really the greatest solution. Day 3, we're going to jump into another case study. So again, just throwing in more social proof, bonus points if this is super relevant. If you want to take this a step further, if you have multiple ICPs or multiple verticals that you go after, you can create versions of this flow for each one of those different verticals. And then day 4, we jump into the solution framework. So this is, how we solve the problem that we were talking about. Day 5, jump into more social proof. And the reality is this can be as short or as long as you want. You know, you could keep going forever with this if you really wanted to, so that those that didn't take action or those that didn't close right away would continue to receive these emails and be nurtured regarding your solution, the problems that you solve, and then obviously situations and case studies where you've done it before in the past. You can also filter with different cadences. Like, by no means is 1 email a day for 5 days the sweet spot. What you want to do is send them as much information as you can until it starts to be annoying. Like, obviously you want to dial it back. You don't want to berate them or barrage them. This is a problem that they want to solve, but you have to be weary. Like, you can throw a deal off if you send people too much prior to, and it also really depends on the platform. Like, if you're just focusing on cold email, it's a little bit more of a low trust platform. You know, you don't want to hit them with too much because maybe they're not as far along at this point yet. But if they're coming from content or coming from YouTube or something like that, maybe you can get away with sending them a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. And then second, again, on the automated reminder side of things, there's going to be the pre-call reminders, just telling them about the time. So I usually do both email and text, and I usually do 24 hours before, 4 hours, and 10 minutes before. And these don't have to be anything complicated. You know, just a quick reminder of the meeting that you scheduled with me in 4 hours. We'll be meeting here. It can be as simple as that. You can add, you know, options to cancel or reschedule or whatever you really want there. You can make it your own. The idea here obviously is just to prevent no-shows by having these reminders in place, because people do get busy. And then on the manual side of things, this is like brownie points to the max. If you really want to take this to the next level and you want to do a lot of work prior to each call and, you know, really establish that relationship with your prospects before you even meet with them, jump in and just send them a text from your personal number. You know, hey, it's Aaron from Growth Player. Saw you booked a time to chat tomorrow. Just wanted to reach out and confirm that time still works. Or you could ask them a question, you know, is there anything like in particular you wanted to focus on with this call? Would love to prepare some stuff before that. Different things like that. This can be the day before. And then if there's no response, jump in and do like a selfie video, basically like a video of you reiterating the previous message and maybe adding a little bit of value. Again, you're showing your face. It shows you're a real human. They're meeting with you, not some sales rep. All of those things just add up and paint the picture better. And then again, if there's no response next morning, aka the day of the meeting, you just want to send one last text. So just reaching out to confirm the time is still good for us. And again, like the idea here is just to make sure that you have that line of communication with them through text. This also becomes crazy beneficial later on down the road. If you need to reschedule or you need to follow up, you've kind of opened the door with text, and it doesn't seem weird if you just text them out of the blue. Whereas, like, you know, the alternative is trying to keep up with them on email or LinkedIn, which isn't always the greatest platform. This is the video that you're looking for. Now, the first thing that you need is an offer. And this is honestly something that every single person gets wrong. They think that they can just pitch their main service, you know, throw it all out there and actually get replies. But like, just think about it. Not a single person is going to read a cold email from a complete stranger and just sign away a $5,000 retainer, which is exactly why you need to come up with a front-end offer. Basically, a front-end offer is this like low risk entry point so that a cold prospect can kind of get an idea of what you do and the quality of work and everything before they actually commit to working with you. And when you offer something like that for free or cheap and just generally make it easy to say yes to you, you stand out from everybody else in the inbox. But the tricky part is actually coming up with one. So let me walk you through exactly what to do. So first thing you're going to want to do is open up ChatGPT. Now I've got a custom GPT here for cold email offers, but you really don't need this. You can just jump right in, and you're going to want to feed it maybe like 3 or 4 core things. Obviously, you're going to want to feed it your main offer. You're going to want to explain who your ideal customer is. You're going to want to explain the major pain points you solve, and you're going to want to explain the types of results you get. This will just give it a little bit of an idea of the things that we can put together that, you know, will naturally lead into your core offer, because we don't just want this to be some random thing. So first of all, like just for the sake of this video, let's do this. What is a front-end offer? All right, so now that we have the description of what a front-end offer is, like it obviously knows what we're looking for. I'm going to explain a little bit about the client that we're going to come up with a front-end offer for. So I have a client who offers funding/lending and can help you get up to $2 million in funding same day. Their ideal customer is anyone who needs capital for capital intensive purposes. Some examples are cool. So I just listed a random industry of a client that we work with. They're like general offer, nothing too definitive. And then generally the types of people that they work with, even though their ICP is pretty large. So first, positioning principle for funding. The real pain point is not I want money. It's I don't know how much I actually qualify for. I don't know how fast I can get it. I don't know what type of capital won't screw me later. I don't want my credit wrecked or waste weeks. So front end offer should be a same-day capital eligibility snapshot. So basically show you exactly how much you can access today without impacting your credit. Funding readiness assessment, find out if your business qualifies for that or what's blocking it. And then operational pain angle. So something about mapping the smartest way to fund your next equipment or expansion. I kind of like some of these ideas, but I also might try something else. So if we outlined the potential growth they could see by bringing on funding versus just growing organically. All right, so this is fantastic. Basically what it's outlining is exactly what the prospect is going to get from this engagement. And that's the most important thing when it comes to an offer, is you don't just want to talk about, you know, the service itself, like, oh, we help people do X, Y, and Z. It's more so, this is exactly what you're going to get from this engagement. So in this front end offer example, which they've called the capital acceleration impact review, we'll show you the difference between growing organically and growing with capital using your real numbers, right? So some people have no idea what they could do if they had funding, because they've never really gone that route. They've never really gone that like atypical growth route. They've always just grown via their clients and their organic. But let's see. So this explains why it works well for industrial and manufacturing. And then this is the most important part. So how this transitions naturally to the main offer. At the end of the call, the close is clean and non-salesy. So if accelerating this timeline makes sense, then we can help you secure the capital to execute it. If not, you know exactly where you stand. And then this might be like a little bit of an atypical type offer. You know, you can understand why this works though. Someone is reaching out just with that core offer to help you realize your potential, and there's no ask at that point, right? Like, it's not like you're saying, hey, you know, we can offer you Amazon growth services and we'll get your products to the top of the listing page. It's nothing like that, where like there's a clear financial ask in return. Like, it's an exchange. With this, you're just leading value first, and you're not really asking for anything in that first call. You're just showing your expertise, showing them the potential, and really just like helping them build that trust gap in the first little bit. And then that naturally progresses into your main offer if there's a fit. If we want to see one more example kind of like of that, you know, Amazon offer that I was just talking about, front end offer for an Amazon growth agency. So with that Amazon growth offer, a really good example of front end offers could be something like, you know, growth ceiling snapshot will show you how much your Amazon store could be making without very much change. See if they come up with any other ones. Amazon growth versus organic, profit leak. So we'll pinpoint where your Amazon store is silently losing profit. Scale readiness assessment. Some of these are great. And then other things you could look at are just like, you know, maybe a free updated image for their listings or something along those lines. Like on one hand, with the front end offer, you can do a service, but you can also do a delivery as well, right? So a free ad creative, a free listing creative, something along those lines, which would just be you know, contingent on a call. When you're coming up with your offer, you're always going to want to test like 3 or 4, do something service-based where it's, you know, maybe like an audit or some sort of like growth potential mapping, do something very service delivery based, so you can really just offer something tangible to them, and then maybe test something that's almost like a lead magnet, because that really is an offer in and of itself too. If you have a really valuable asset that helps them solve a problem, that's what you're offering to them, and then you can then bridge that into the main offer as well. So now you know what to offer people, but who do you offer that to? And that's where we start building your lead list. Luckily, you don't have to look for all of these people manually like you may have used to in the past, because Apollo.io can do that all for you. The only thing you really need to know here is the customer that you potentially want to target. And the easiest way to do that, obviously, is to look at your existing customers. So basically, you'll just focus on things like their job title, the industry that they're in, the company size, so on and so forth, and put that together to kind of create a persona. This way, you'll be able to easily generate a lead list with people that'll be likely to convert because you know you've done it before in the past. So again, I would just open up a checklist, something like this when you're doing your lead list building. Think about your top 3 to 5 clients, ask what industry they're in, their company size, employee count, job titles, location, so on and so forth. Once you have all of these mapped out, you can pretty much just go into Apollo and start inserting the various criteria. If you want some help with this, you can also jump into
ChatGPT and just ask it to come up with the criteria for you. And that's generally what we do. So if we go back to the lending offer, for example, my client has a lending offer. We want to provide capital to equipment heavy industry companies. Can you help me create a list of relevant job titles, keywords, etc. for those in manufacturing that would be relevant for this offer? Cool. So it's basically just going to put together a bunch of industries, keywords, focus on job titles and keywords, all commas. Cool. So now I have my job titles and I have my keywords, and I'll walk you through Apollo real quick. So when it comes to Apollo, you basically have like 5 to 10 filters that you're going to want to focus on. So the first one is obviously job titles, which we just got ChatGPT to come up with, and we're going to include that. You can easily go and, choose management level and things like that as well, if you think that that is going to be relevant. And then you're going to want to jump into location. So we're going to be doing US in this case. You have both the contact level and the account level. So contact is where the person lives, and then the account level is where the company actually exists, like their headquarters. And then we're going to want to jump into keywords. Essentially, with the keywords and industry section, you can use industries. Industries are very broad. Oftentimes they won't give you the best results. I usually find the better results come from just stacking as many keywords as possible that are only relevant to the people that you're particularly looking for. And also, just a bit of a pro tip, if you include your keywords in here, you can also jump in and choose types of keywords and add company descriptions to increase the number of people that you're reaching out to. Awesome. And then I also want to just validate the company size. I'm not sure if they mentioned that here. What would be the best company size for a 2 mil lending offer? So we're looking at some bigger companies here. Manufacturing companies generally have a lot of employees too, because they're more like boots on the ground. And we'll probably focus on one of these first two. So you can see here, there are a ton of people on the list still, 41,000. We don't need that many people. So let's narrow down the job titles. Let's focus on the decision makers, not like as many as possible. And these are different things that you can play with to get to the number of prospects that you really want to reach out to. And I'll cover infrastructure and the capacity in a few here. Even jumping down to this, we have around 36,000. So you're just gonna want to keep playing with this. Maybe we just focus on 50 to 100, or maybe we go up a little bit higher and do the 100 to 200. You can really just mess around with the predefined ranges until you get the number of prospects that you want to go after. I think 15,000 in this situation is probably fine, and we'll roll with that. Now, exporting from Apollo becomes extremely expensive, especially when you're trying to pull, anywhere from 15,000 and beyond leads. So instead of just signing up for the regular plan, which could cost, hundreds, if not thousands, what you're gonna wanna use is a tool like Ample Leads. So I'll show you Ample Leads real quick. Essentially what it is a Apollo scraper. So you're gonna want to create an account, sign in, and all you have to do in this situation is go and grab your URL from Apollo, go back to Ample Leads, drop the URL, include the number of leads, include the file name, and so on. And then if you go to the credits, just to give you an idea of what this all costs. So if you wanted to do 15,000 in this case, you'd be looking at around $29, which is super cheap compared to everything else. And then obviously as you get to scale, you can start increasing that number. But basically you just insert that list, choose the number of leads, give it a name, and then you'll get your list scraped and sent to you shortly after. Now, if you want help setting up cold email systems just like this and you don't really know where to start, I'm opening up a few spots for outbound consulting. This means that you'll get a 14-day launch plan, all of our internal trainings and SOP videos, and one-on-one calls with me so you can get it all right the first time. Now note, this is not a done for you offer, so spots will be limited. That means I'm honestly capped by the time that I can spend on these one-on-one calls, so there'll only be a few of them. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can apply
apply via the first link below, but just make sure to select the done with you option when you're filling out the form. But either way, now that you have your offer and your lead list ready, the next step is going to be writing out your cold email scripts. And this is where people usually make either like one of two mistakes. Either they write these long personalized essays that nobody really has the attention span to read, or they write these completely sales focused emails that just scream, I'm trying to sell you something. But neither of those actually work anymore. People are more aware than ever, and anything that looks like a sales pitch in disguise is going to get ignored. So the only way to get replies now is actually by doing the opposite. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is jump back to your offer. Once you have your offer outlined, you're going to want to copy and paste all of that information, whether you did it in ChatGPT or you have it on a document, and then bring it over to something like Claude. Now, you can literally just throw your offer into Claude and ask it for a short conversational way to pitch that in an email in 1 to 2 lines max. I'll show you exactly what my prompt looks like. I've kind of refined this to include all of our best performing email scripts in a couple frameworks. But once I insert this, you'll kind of see what they look like. And then you can pretty much just create a prompt that follows the same structures. So we're just going to ask it to create copy for this offer. And this is going to be the financing offer, which basically has that front end offer around, what they can leverage capital for. So you can see here, it's come up with a couple of subject lines: manufacturing growth question, first name capacity timeline, quick growth scenario question. And you can even test these against, the tried and true, like first name question or FYI first name, or just something super simple. Like the subject line is 0.001% importance when it comes to the email itself. Just don't make it something completely obvious that's sales focused. You want to leave something to curiosity and just kind of leave it a little bit broad, like these ones here. Jumping into the frameworks, again, the best cold emails are literally just going to be the offer in of itself, right? Interested in seeing what organic growth is actually costing company name in a missed capacity and timeline and delays. We mapped this for a $12 million fabrication shop last month. Turned out staying organic was costing them $380K a year in contracts they couldn't bid on due to equipment restraints. The only thing with this one, so I like it, I would just be a little bit more clear about the offer itself. So, first name, if we could map out exactly how much money you could be making in the next couple of years by injecting, $2 million in capital or whatever it is, would that be worth the chat? Or basically just outlining the free offer that you're doing without any sort of like ask, right? Same with this next one. Interested in a side-by-side comparison showing company names next 12 to 24 months with and without capital acceleration. And we would want to position this as valuable, right? Like, do you want to do a free, growth consulting? I wouldn't use something like that, but maybe like interested in a free side-by-side comparison or free growth analysis or free growth projection, something along those lines, where it sounds like something that they would pay money for. It sounds like something that's super valuable that you're willing to do for free. And then again, the PS line for social proof, that always works really, really well. And then there's a few other angles that you could try, like maybe like more pain focus, like poke the bear style, which is basically just noticed you're in X, Y, and Z industry. This is like a relevance first line. Have you ever quantified what slow organic growth is actually costing you in missed bids, delayed expansion, or capacity you can unlock? We build side-by-side scenarios for operators like you, what your next 12 to 24 months look like organically versus with capital acceleration using your real numbers. We're sending over an example. This thing here works really well because it's low friction. You're just sending something over and you're painting the picture as to why that this is important. Not a pitch, just a 20-minute call that maps out both paths so you can see the timeline decision with actual data. Again, you're building curiosity. They want to know what this could potentially look like. You're not asking for anything. It's all very front-end offer focused and not focused on the actual like service delivery. These things are going to perform pretty well, I'd imagine, if you just make a few of those tweaks to the first two that I mentioned, just on like specificity and just making sure they're a little bit more clear. And then also you can kind of notice the conversational nature that I've implemented in some of these where, you don't even use hey, hi, hello, greetings or anything. You just get straight to the point, straight to the offer, direct, add a little bit of social proof and you're done. And the nice thing with these short one-liner emails is obviously there's a lot more to say than just one line. And that allows you to really leverage that information in email 2 or email 3. So you can pretty much just make email 2 something along the lines of, by the way, first name, I forgot to mention that the growth potential analysis or whatever it is that you want to call that front end offer also includes X, Y, and Z, or doesn't require X, Y, and Z, like maybe a pain point or an objection that they have. You can use it to pre-handle things that they might be concerned about, add layers of benefits, and just generally sweeten it up if they didn't answer you the first time. Or you can shift it so that in, the first email, you're offering a call, essentially, that front end offer. And then in the second email, maybe you try a separate mechanism, something a little bit easier to say yes to, like a document covering how you'd go about this. So it's a little bit less friction and a little bit easier to say yes to. Now that the email copy's done, that brings us to one of the most important parts of the process, and that's the infrastructure. You see, you can't just fire out 10,000 cold emails from one domain and just call it a day. That'll either throw you into the spam folder or ruin your main domain's reputation. So you need to spread out your sending over multiple domains and sending accounts. The good news is this doesn't have to cost you thousands of dollars. You just need enough email sending accounts and domains so that you can reach out to your entire total addressable market, all the people that are relevant to your offer, in about 90 days consistently. So let me show you the cheapest and easiest way to set this up. When it comes to infrastructure, I just mapped out a few things. So you're going to want to do 50-50 Google and Outlook. This is to mitigate risk. If anything comes up on Google side or if anything comes up on Outlook side, you're covered on the opposite. And these are going to go back and forth between which one works the best in various different situations. It is never constant, so just do both. With Google, you can set up one domain with 2 accounts. That allows you to do 10 cents per account or 20 cents per day. With Outlook, it's a little bit more lenient, so you can do one domain per 99 accounts. Each account does 5 cents per day, so that's 495 per day. I'd recommend anybody just getting started, regardless of how big their TAM is, start with at least 10 to 20,000 cents per month. And to do that, you can set it up pretty easily with 20 domains on Google, which is 50 sending accounts, roughly, or 20, maybe 25 domains, 50 sending accounts, 500 cents per day, which will give you 10K cents per month. We'll switch that to 25. And then on the Outlook side, you can literally just buy one domain, set up 99 accounts. That does 495 cents per day and 10,000 cents per month. So that'd be 10,000 cents per month on Outlook, 10,000 cents per month on Google. Now, this used to be crazy difficult. You used to have to set up SPF, DMARC, DKIM records and make sure everything looks good on the back end, do it all manually on your own and buy that through Google or Outlook. But now it's super simple. You can go to a tool like InboxKit and just purchase your accounts here. They do both Outlook and Google, or you can use Zapmail. Zapmail also does the same. They have both Outlook and Google available for pretty affordable prices. You can see here, if you wanted to set up 30 Google mailboxes, that's only $100 a month. And the same thing here with InboxKit. If you wanted to set up that enterprise Azure infrastructure, $30 a domain per month. Now, again, the nice thing with these infrastructure resellers is you don't need to do any of the work. All you have to do is go in, submit an order form, check out, and then they'll automatically pre-configure every single thing that needs to be done and add them to your email sending platform. And that brings us to the last step. Now that you have your infrastructure set up, you obviously need a sequencer or an email sending tool to send the emails from. And there are honestly a dozen different tools out there. But the truth is you don't need to choose the most expensive or feature platform to use. You just need one that's simple, affordable, and easy to use. So here are the best options for beginners, in my opinion. I'll go through 2 to 3 and I'll also tell you which one is my favorite. So the first one is SmartLead. I actually started my outbound journey on SmartLead and we later switched over to a private sending tool. SmartLead's great. You're going to spend around $80 to $100 a month to be able to get this up and running. It's got everything you need. They've really tried to make this an all-in-one solution. So I definitely check this one out first. They obviously have a 14-day trial. You can get in there and just really see how that works. If you want super simple, basically the Mac to the PC comparison, I would jump in and use Instantly. Instantly is great for beginners because it keeps everything super simple. There's no bells and whistles, but it gives you everything that you need to manage everything in one place. And again, pricing is going to be very comparable. You're looking at roughly $77, $80 per month on the plan that you'd need here. And then lastly, kind of the new kid on the block is PlusVibe. So PlusVibe, I have not used myself, but if I were to recommend any one of these 3, this is the one I would recommend you to use just because of their reputation for delivery. So they're going to be a very similar price point. They're going to have all of the same bells and whistles, but they actually have a really good warm-up pool. And I've heard that the delivery using this platform is a lot better than the other 2, likely because they have smaller user base and they are that new kid. There hasn't been as many people jumping on and kind of like tarnishing the shared reputation of the platforms. Once you get this set up, whichever one you choose, you're obviously going to have to import your email accounts into the sending sequencer and then start your 2-week warm-up period, which is super simple. Each one of these platforms can outline how to do that for you. Honestly, it's just a matter of flicking a button on, choosing a couple settings, and you're good to go. And then lastly, I'm going to show you this one, but I wouldn't really recommend you start here because it's a little bit more on the expensive side. This is the one that we use. It's called Email Bison. It's a private email sequencer for the top 1%. You have to apply to actually be able to use it. And the benefit of Email Bison, once you get to this point, is that it is a private infrastructure, so you don't share your reputation with any of the other users on the platform, which obviously leads to better reply rates, better results, more book calls, so on and so forth.
I've broken it down into 3 parts. The first part is the foundation, where you set up everything that you need before you send a single email. Next is the launch, which includes everything that gets your emails open, read, and replied to. And then lastly, it's the close, where you turn positive replies into book calls and then again, actual revenue. So let's start with the foundation. This is the step that makes or breaks everything else. And it's also where I see most cold email campaigns completely fall apart, because many people assume that cold email is, I guess, purely a volume game, and that you can literally just like copy and paste any old template, load up a list of 5,000 contacts, and just wait for calls to start filling into your calendar. But think about it. You're reaching out to a complete stranger, unsolicited, and asking them to give your time and potentially even their money. The chance of getting a response is already low. So if what you're offering them in your email doesn't immediately speak to a real problem that they actually have, or if your email never even makes it into their inbox in the first place because you've neglected the foundation step, nothing you do will matter anyways, which is why so many businesses struggle to get results. Now, the only way to prevent this from happening is to build a solid foundation, which involves 3 different steps. Now, the first one is your offer, and you're gonna wanna build your offer based on your ideal customer profile. You're gonna wanna do a ton of research, figure out the various different personas and what keeps them up at night. Then you're gonna wanna position your offer to solve that thing and make it super low friction. I just had a quick chat with Claude here and came up with a few different front-end offers for a cold email lead generation agency. And what it suggested is a free lead list of 50 high intent prospects or something along those lines. In this case, a good offer would be something that's free, very relevant to something that they're experiencing at the moment, easy to consume, low friction, so on and so forth. And a bad offer would be something along the lines of like offering them 20 to 30 calls per month or they don't pay. Again, for this step, all you need to do is do your research, understand the ICP, understand the persona, understand what keeps them up at night, create an offer that you can put in front of them that's super low friction, easy for you to fulfill, but super valuable for them. Second step is building out a targeted lead list. Now, this can be as easy or as complicated as you make it. There are a ton of different ways that you can do this, including jumping into a tool like Clay or Apollo or one of the other data providers out there. They're all going to derive fairly similar results. It's more about how you use the tool than the tool itself. I usually find myself chatting with Claude or another LLM to try and come up with a bunch of different keywords that might be relevant to the given audience that we're searching for, versus something like using industry filters, which usually aren't very accurate. And again, you just pull those over to your preferred list building tool, add in any other relevant filters, including the company size, any sort of exclusions. You can look at funding, and with Clay, you can even do this all for 0 cost. From here, you can jump into the people search and choose the job titles that you want, dive into where the prospects are located. And if you're really trying to get creative, you can even jump into things like follower and connection count on LinkedIn, which is great if you're trying to find people that are super active on the platform. Once you're here, you can use dozens of different data sources to enrich your prospects for email accounts, just like we've done here with Prospeo. And you can even jump in and use Clay's AI agent feature called Claygent to find dozens of different sources of data to leverage in your email copy. This can literally be anything you want to personalize your copy with. You can see here tons of different templates such as portfolio companies, upcoming events for companies, YouTube accounts, blogs, open pay range for companies, if they have affiliate programs, case studies, and really, again, whatever you want. Once you've got your offer and your list set, it's literally just a matter of buying a bunch of domains, just like these ones here. And these are going to be lookalike domains of your main domain, bringing them over to an infrastructure provider. So those that sell email accounts, such as premium inboxes, you can see here, you can get inboxes for as low as $3 per month. And then it's just a matter of figuring out your sending volume. So for example, if you want to do roughly 50,000 sends per month, That's roughly 2,500 sends per day, which would require 250 inboxes, 125 domains, which would ultimately cost you something like $750 per month for the inboxes, and then $375 one time for the domains. And again, this could be done much cheaper or much more expensive depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then once you've ordered your inboxes, it's pretty much just a matter of uploading them into your sequencer, warming them for 2 weeks to make sure that they're all good to go and that your emails land in the primary inbox, and then launching your campaigns. So now you've got a solid offer, a clean lead list, and deliverability setup that is actually ready to go, which means it's time to launch campaigns, and then ultimately write emails and sending them out in a way that actually gets people to reply. First, you don't want to over or undersend and risk either getting reported as spam or getting lost in an already crowded inbox. Second, you want to make sure that you do your offer justice and give people a real reason to respond to your email, which means nailing every element in the actual email itself. Now, let me show you how to get this right. Now, I already explained how to calculate how many inboxes you need to set a certain amount of volume, but when it comes to the inbox itself, you're going to want to make sure that you maintain particular sending levels as well. So with Google, you're going to want to make sure you're not sending any more than 10 emails per day per account. And then with Outlook, depending on the setting, you're going to want to send 5 per day per account. And again, if you purchase from a reseller like Premium Inboxes, which I showed you, they'll give you all of these numbers as well. Now, I know a common argument is whether to send volume or be more personalized. And I think the reality is, even if you're trying to be a little bit more personalized, you need volume to be able to get enough data to find statistical significance for your offer and what's actually working. So the more volume you're able to send, the faster you're able to figure out an angle that works, the faster you're able to validate an offer, and the faster you're going to be able to push forward and focus on the area of the market that you find is most drawn to what you're offering based on the data that you're able to provide. So I think as much as some people might say they want to go a little bit more personalized and some people try and take a little bit more of a volume approach, I actually think a combination of both is what's required to be able to get the best results. And then again, once you do get up to volume, you're going to want to look for some basic KPIs, anything from a 1 to like 3% reply rate. You want to keep that bounce rate below 1, maybe 1.5 at the highest. And then you're going to want to have your interested rate anywhere between like 7 and 15%. And again, if you can get higher than that, you know, all the better. We have tons of clients that are getting 20, 30% interested rates. It all depends on the offer. You can see an example of a campaign here that had a pretty good reply rate and a decent interested rate. All that it took here was some solid copy. You can see we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different variations, and then 2 different variations of the follow-up. And then when it came to delay, there was a 2-day delay between the two. And then with the variations, you want to be super scientific about it. So instead of changing up every single variable in every single version of the copy, you want to change one minute variable in every single one so that you can tell which one led to the improved results. So you can see here, a lot of these are very similar. A lot of the offer is almost the same. We're just testing things such as having 2 lines plus a PS against something like a one-liner entirely with no PS line, no CTA, all kind of together in one. And then with the follow-ups, we always try to make them super low friction. So if the first email is something like offering to connect them with particular prospects in a given industry, the follow-up could be something like offering to send them a video explaining how it was done. It's a little bit lower friction, easier to say yes to, and then ultimately serves as a different way to offer the same thing that they might actually be a little bit more receptive to. And then once a campaign's live, it's literally just a matter of deactivating the angles that don't get proper responses. Some sequencers actually do this automatically and you can set a certain percentage, but with this one, we do it all manually. Now, if you want to implement this entire system without having to learn how to do any of this yourself, you can actually just book a call using the first link below. We send out more than 1.5 cold emails a month and have generated over 45 million in pipeline revenue for our clients using the exact same steps that we're covering in this video, including setting up the infra, building out the lead list, creating irresistible offers, and writing compelling emails that consistently get responses. So if you'd like to see if we can do the same for your business, again, just book a call below. But either way, getting replies may feel like a big win, but that's only really, I would say, maybe half the battle, because what comes next is just as important. And here's where a lot of businesses truthfully start slipping up. They spend weeks and weeks and weeks building out their infrastructure, warming it all up, writing great emails, and increasing their sending volume. But then as soon as they start getting replies, all of that momentum falls flat. They either get overwhelmed by all of the emails they need to respond to, or they book dozens of calls with people who are unqualified and they never even show up. But it doesn't really need to be this way, because all you need is 3 simple things to ensure that leads you are dedicating your time and effort to are actually worth it. So the first thing you're going to want to do in the inbox is make sure that you have some sort of AI categorization telling you whether each response is a no, a I'm interested, request for a meeting, request for more information, or just like an automated out of office type response. This allows you to focus your energy on those that are actually interested versus the hundreds of others that are going to be in your inbox. And then once you get interested responses like this, it's just a matter of answering any objections they have, responding to them with a few available times, and then pushing that forward to a meeting. I think most people complicate this step and they try to have back and forth conversations as much as possible, but the most important part here is just pushing it towards a meeting as fast as possible while actually acknowledging their objections. And then if you're really trying to protect your calendar and ensure you only have conversations with the highest quality leads, you're going to want to set up something via Calendly to pre-qualify those that you're chatting with. So for us, we use a Calendly form here. You can see we ask things about the prospect's website, their current revenue, their deal size, what exactly that they're interested in, so on and so forth. And we kind of pre-frame them for the call so they know exactly what they're getting into and that this actually is a discovery call. So we'll leave a brief description telling them exactly what it is, what we're offering, and then provide all of these questions to ensure that the prospect is the right fit. If the prospect isn't the right fit on our end, say they come in, the revenue is a little bit too low, we can easily just cancel the call and leave them a quick note. And then on top of that, we even go as far as pushing them to a confirmation page, answering some of the frequently asked questions that they have prior to the call, just to make sure that they're that much more warm when they show up. And then we send them through a series of pre-call emails and SMS. So this is going to be everything from your traditional automated reminders to actual nurture emails that, again, just warm them up prior to that call. So when they do jump on and chat with you, they actually have a ton more context about what it is that you offer. So it's easier to make a decision in that first call instead of dragging things out to like 2, 3, or even 4 calls like some people do. And these can be pretty straightforward, everything from case studies to going over problems that the common person has to even explaining your frameworks and just exactly how things are done. You can pretty much just make this whatever it is that you want and whatever you think is going to be most effective. I usually find looking at the most common objections that you see in your sales calls and pre-handling them during this email process is the most effective way of going about it. And then usually I find with all of this in place, you end up having some pretty solid conversations.
That means no manual research or writing scripts myself. I'm just going to let AI do all of the hard work for me. See, most people think AI can't help you book calls from cold outreach. They say it just spits out generic scripts, doesn't really find the right leads, and then falls apart when somebody replies. But after booking over 2,000 sales calls this year with the help of AI, I completely disagree. And I'm giving myself just 2 hours to prove them wrong.
We've actually got interested responses that have come through already, which is awesome.
And I'm going to be showing you everything live so you can see if using AI in your outreach actually works or if I'm just wasting my time for nothing. So to get started, I've mapped out every single thing that I need to pull this off. So we're going to need to find people to reach out to, obviously, build out the lead list, create an offer using AI, generate email copy and follow-ups, launch the campaign, and then obviously I'm going to keep you in the loop as things progress. Now, before we send out any emails, we obviously need to figure out who we're going to target. And for this campaign, I picked fractional executives because we had some luck running campaigns for a client of ours in this space. And it's somewhere that we've never really done outreach ourselves. So I figured it'd be a good example just to kind of show you guys the process from scratch. But I still obviously need to do some research about the industry so that I can use the information throughout this process. And of course, I'm going to use AI to do that. All right, so I'm going to be jumping into ChatGPT 5.1 and I'm going to put it on research mode. I'm then going to ask it to come up with a detailed campaign brief to assist in preparation for my cold outbound campaign targeting fractional executives in the US. I'm going to be cool. So my prompt is set and I'm going to run that and see what it comes up with. All right, so we just had to clarify a few things, but now we're obviously waiting for the research to be done. All right, awesome. So that took a few, but obviously saved us a bunch of time. Let's take a look and see what it came up with. So essentially what we've got here is a campaign brief, breakdown of the target audience. So basically what a fractional executive is, the common profile. So, you know, CFO, CMO, CTO, COO, fractional sales leaders, so on and so forth.
And then let's take a look at the TAM map. That's going to be important to determine what the best strategy is going to be like going forward. So it breaks down that the talent pool is growing. Estimated 80,000 fractional executives operate in US and Canada, accounting for roughly 60% of the global market. Awesome. So it looks like it's pretty sizable. 80,000 people is enough in and of itself to run campaigns, and definitely something really sizable. So we don't need to handle this audience too lightly. Obviously, we have some room for testing, room for trying out volume, room for trying out a more targeted approach. And we can kind of just test out a few different things when it comes to that regard. There's no real limitations based on what I'm seeing so far. And then a few of the key industries that they want to focus on. So tech, manufacturing, SaaS, healthcare, finance, nonprofits. I'm already thinking, maybe a personalization later down the road, once we get to the copy, around the area that they focus on. Company size and segment, key pain points. So, low market awareness, struggling with client acquisition and lead generation. That's obviously perfect for us. Crowded market, so there's a lot of people out there doing what they do and they really need to stand out. One way to stand out obviously is being the first one in front of your audience at all times. Economic pressure on clients, scaling and time constraints. That's a good thing for us. Awesome. Cool. So overall, this gives us a ton of information, everything from how big the market is, the things that they're dealing with, and just generally gives us some information that we can feed into some of the other prompts for copywriting, for coming up with the offer, for even lead list building, and so on. And the key there obviously is now we know exactly who we want to target and how big the market is. But the next step naturally is building out the lead list. The only problem here obviously is that, there's 80,000 fractional professionals in the US. And we need to figure out which ones are worth reaching out to if we just have kind of like a short time frame to work within. Because like I said, we only really have a few hours to get this campaign to actually work. So I want to know which ones are going to be the ones that are worth reaching out to. So instead of just creating an 80,000 person lead list in Apollo, I'm going to use AI to help me filter it down and get the information I need to segment the lists. So to make this part easier, I'm actually going to use a custom GPT that's made to filter down the different criteria in Apollo. And, even easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over the campaign brief to give this custom GPT an idea of exactly who we're going to be reaching out to so that they can get a better idea of how to segment, the list and provide keywords and industry filters and things like that. Cool. So basically just added a little bit of context here and then shared the campaign brief, but basically just asked it to help me come up with some keywords and filters to target fractional executives, share the keywords in comma separated format, and then again, the breakdown of the campaign brief. And if you want access to all of the prompts that I use, it'll be down in the description. Cool. So as you can see here, obviously it came up with a bunch of job titles, which is going to be really helpful in this situation. It came up with some industry to target. I might avoid that. If you've seen my other videos, you kind of know how I feel about the industry filters, but keywords are going to be great. We might need to refine these a little bit. Company size filters are always awesome. And then location is going to be important as well. And you can see here, it goes into depth a little bit more with what we should be looking at. So let me pull all this over to Apollo and I'll show you what we get from there. All right, so we've pulled everything over from our custom GPT and we've added a few filters. Obviously with email status, we just want the ones that we can reach out to. We've included the job titles. I've added some location filters on both the contact and the account level. I've chosen employee size 1 to 10. Obviously, this is an interesting situation where fractional workers aren't necessarily always going to be their own company. They could be working for bigger companies, smaller companies, so on and so forth. But we want to focus on those that are smaller, that are kind of stuck doing things themselves and really need somebody to take over the outbound side of their business. Usually when I do most of my campaigns, I almost do the opposite, where you want the established businesses that are like 10 plus or 20 plus employee size, all the way up to like the end of that mid-market type level. But in this case, we're going to flip it around, see if we can try and get those like, earlier stage fractionals that are maybe coming off of an opportunity with like a bigger company. And then from here, obviously you can see that the TAM is a lot bigger than what we thought. So 193,000 individuals is what we get from here. So we're going to want to do some things within the custom GPT to narrow that down. All right, so we've narrowed it down a little bit here by focusing on the fractional sales side of things. The reason why I did this is because I know which offers sell well via outbound, and I know those that are more closely related to revenue or sales end up performing better. So I'm almost, qualifying them ahead of time So I know that not only are these people going to be easier to bring on as clients, but once we have them as clients, they're actually going to be easier to fulfill for, which is kind of an important thing to think about ahead of time. And then once you've got your list set in Apollo, obviously you're going to want to scrape that data. And the way that we're doing that right now is just by pulling the lead list from a tool like AmpleLeads. So all you have to do is grab the URL of the search criteria, jump over into AmpleLeads, drop your search criteria here, include the number of leads. So in our case, that's going to be, 15,000. You want to name this, let's go sales executives. And then you're going to want to start scraping. Obviously you need to make sure you have enough credits as we do here, and then you'll pull that list. So once the scraping is done from AmpleLeads, obviously you're going to import that list into Clay. So we're going to import CSV here. Cool. So as you can see, we've got all of our data in Clay. I actually broke the list down into a few different segments. I went back and decided to include some of the other sections, so not just fractional sales leaders, but we're going to obviously focus there. And then a few are going to be kind of like in the miscellaneous space. But all that being said, our information's here: first name, last name, company name, email, so on and so forth, everything from that to their location, founded year, basically everything you'd get out of Apollo. And then when you're in Clay, obviously you can do everything from enrich for any sort of emails that you're missing. You can jump in and pull, company descriptions. And then obviously what we're going to be using it for, creating relevant personalizations with AI. So the nice thing with Clay is that you can actually use AI to come up with the prompts that you're going to be using to then use AI to find data. So in this case, we're literally just telling it exactly what we want it to come up with. So we want to go to the person's website and determine what their ideal customer profile is. This will primarily be the industry in which they target for their services. Cool. You can literally be as simple as that, because obviously the AI is going to generate a proper prompt for you, and then you can just, fix things and tweak things depending on what you're looking for. Cool. So it's basically put the prompt together. It's got context, objectives, instructions, examples, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously the examples are going to be huge. You're going to want to look at those and make sure that that's the actual output that you want. So you can see here, input is first name, last name, company name, website, and then the output is something like healthcare or financial services. And I didn't really prompt it in that direction, but that was exactly what I was looking for. And you can see here just the brief instructions. Obviously they're going to start with the URL, so the website that we have of the company. We're going to go to the website or the person's LinkedIn or the company LinkedIn, locate pages like target customer, industries, go through navigation, menu items, so on and so forth, go through their services, solutions, case studies, etc. And then basically it's going to look for phrases like we serve, for, built for, solutions, industry sectors, etc., and pull those. With the model itself, it's going to suggest a particular model to use. You're probably not going to want to use it in most cases, just because that will be the most expensive. And if you're running this at scale, it does add up. Usually what we rely on is 4L Mini. So we'll use 4L Mini, connect our GPT API key, so that we're actually just able to leverage that versus Clay credits, which get expensive. And then as with every single prompt, you're just going to want to run a couple rows and see how it comes out. Cool. So as you can see here, there's a ton of information that it pulled. It gives us a reasoning, the source URL, their competence, so on and so forth. But the main thing that we want is ICP industry. So we're going to be adding this as a column, and we're just going to call this industry. And then now you can see this here. So now we have exactly who the prospect wants to reach out to, or the type of prospects that they want to reach out to. We're going to also want to, manipulate this a little bit if we're going to be using it in email copy, and I'll show you how to do that via the formulas. So formulas are a nice way of basically manipulating the data that you get from AI without having to use credits or anything like that. So these are things that you could probably do in the prompt, but it's something I didn't include in the first place. So obviously we have to go back and fix it. But essentially what we're going to want to do is use a formula to take the output from industry and ensure it is all lowercase, and then add the word industry after. And then you're going to generate formula. Again, this is just going to automate for you just based on your request. And then you just want to see if this makes sense. So the accounting industry, medical services industry, information technology and services industry, health, wellness, and fitness industry, all sounds perfect. Like that's something you would use in an email. So again, we're just trying to like normalize it, make it very clear what we want to say in that email. Obviously, we're gonna jump into the email copy later, but this is just kind of giving us fuel for that copy once we get to it. Another piece of information I probably want to leverage once we get to the email copy section is just the actual services that are provided. So, you know, with a fractional CFO, it's going to be fractional CFO services, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to come up with that phrase. I want you to come up with the services that this company offers based on their job title. They are a fractional executive, so the output will likely be something like fractional CFO services. Make sure it is in sentence case as it will be used in email copy. Cool. I honestly, you don't really want to overthink these a lot of the times. Just spit out what you're thinking, see what it comes up with, and test. You can try and like prompt engineer and get really in depth with it, but like your time is probably better spent elsewhere. So again, we'll just take a quick look at the breakdown. So you're an AI assistant that generates a concise service description based on the person's job title of the company, generate source sentence case service description that infers the service the company offers. Although looks great. Preserve acronyms. I like that. I was thinking that, but didn't actually type it. Use title, headline, or keywords. That might be fine. We'll see how that goes. I actually want this to be lowercase. Interim. I love how many examples it provides too. You know, you can see all of these potential inputs and then what we want the outputs to be. So this looks like it's gonna be a banger. Awesome. So as you can see, the output was perfect. We don't even need to jump in and create a formula in this case to clean it all up because it looks like it's set for the email copy, not really any changes that need to be made. And then obviously for each of these, we're going to run them for the entire table to make sure that we have data for every single prospect. All right. And then the last thing that we're going to want to do with our Clay table is verify the emails that we're going to be reaching out to. And truthfully, you should probably do this before you do all of your personalizations, just so you're only creating personalizations and running personalizations on emails that you can actually reach out to. So I did it a little bit backwards, but luckily we only did a sample of 10. So we haven't really spent too much for credits. So what I'm going to do is run this verification on the entire table, and then you're going to want to filter for those that are verified. So you can see here validity equals valid, and then once you run your personalizations, you're going to run the personalizations only on the emails that are valid. And then from there, you'll have a clean list with all of your personalizations, all of the enrichments, and you'll know that the emails that you're reaching out to are valid, so you're not going to bounce or anything like that. All right, so now you can see here we have our finalized Clay table with all of the information done. All of our leads are valid. We have everything enriched, and we're then able to determine what the copy strategy is going to be like. Now, if you want to book sales calls without having to learn Clay, all of this prompting stuff, as well as building out the infrastructure yourself, you can book a call with me via the first link below. We've helped clients like Relay Partners book up to 42 calls in just 30 days using this exact system. And if you want to see if we can help you do the same, you can book a call below. But either way, now that we have the list set up, the next step is obviously to come up with the offer. Now, my service is outbound lead generation, but if I reach out to people just asking them if they need lead generation, I'm obviously going to get buried under a bunch of people offering the exact same thing. So instead, I need to come up with an offer that addresses their pain points, feels low risk, and just makes them curious enough to respond. And obviously I'm going to have AI map all of that out. All right, so just jumping into my custom cold email offer GPT, essentially what we're going to want to do is prompt it to come up with a front end offer for obviously our cold email outbound service or whatever your service is. Then let them know that we're going to be targeting fractional executives based on the following research. And then again, I just copied the campaign brief that we built out earlier, so it has all of the context. And then lastly, I highlighted that we want the offer to be the most amount of value that we can provide in the least amount of time on our end. And this is truthfully like the best formula for a front end offer. Like how can we really make an impact for them without having to do too much legwork on our end? And then again, with all prompting, you just want to run it, see what it comes up with, and then we can continue to prompt. So as you can see here, it came up with both offers and front end offers.
It's got your standard, we'll fill your calendar with qualified prospects, we'll help you land fractional executives, we'll help fractional executives land 3 to 5 clients in 60 days or you don't pay. We'll help you stand out in a crowded market, consistently get in front of high intent decision makers. I don't really like a lot of this stuff. And I think, this idea was good in the past, but obviously now we need to lead with the front end offer because, people have kind of seen past a lot of this sort of stuff. They are really desensitized to it. So whenever you can, just providing that upfront value where you don't need all of these cheesy or you don't pay situations. It could be more so let me just give you a quick sample of what we do. I can show you how valuable it is. And then, from there, you can even decide if you want to work with us at all or not. So the one that's really jumping out to me is a bit of a pilot program. So I think that could be interesting. I also I think they mentioned it up above farther. Here. So a free custom lead list. So I almost like the idea of reaching out to these people with the idea that the lead list has already been built. So, reaching out and saying, I found, 20 different companies in industry looking for fractional CFO services or something along those lines. And I'm trying to think about how we can weave this in with the personalizations that we pulled in Clay, obviously to make it look as personalized as possible. So that's kind of where my head's going with that. Obviously, this is a ton of good information. You could probably test all of them if you wanted to, but I think I'm going to roll with that one there. All right. So now that we have what we're going to be offering, we need to turn it into, an email that we're going to be sending out to people. And then this is obviously where AI is going to help us out a ton because manually writing cold email copy variations obviously takes a bunch of time, especially if you want to add in all of those personalizations. So again, to get this done as fast as possible, I'm going to get AI to do the heavy lifting. All right. So for the cold email copy, I'm going to jump back into Claude. We're going to be using Sonnet 4.5. I have a custom project that's set up. And again, I'll be sharing the links to these prompts, but what you're going to want to do is provide some sort of context, so frameworks that you've used in the past, previous campaigns that have worked really well and just things that you've seen there. Give it a bunch of context, provide some information as to what good copy looks like, and then we're going to pull details over from the campaign brief and then also the offer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the research. I'm going to say, I am writing cold email copy for fractional executives. Here's a brief. And of course I spelled brief wrong. And then I also want this to be based on a front end offer, which is going to be, we'll jump back to the offer, pull this into Claude. And then I also want to add a note. So it's one thing to say, oh, we'll reach out to you or we'll provide a list of 50 people that are potentially looking for your services or whatever it is. It's another thing to show that the intent's a lot higher. So if you're I found 50 people that are looking for your service, can I connect you with them? It sounds a lot better than can I put together this lead list for you that's got 50 people on it? It's not as high leverage. If you're talking about the people themselves, which is the thing that they actually want, it's obviously a lot more valuable than a CSV with 50 people on it. But it's all about the perceived value, curiosity that you're creating with the words that you're writing. So we're going to try and portray that as well using AI. And then let's just let it go with, what it suggests, and then we can tweak the CTA and things like that. But I just wanted to give it that little bit of, help, obviously, because I've seen in the past that implied effort goes a long way in email copy. So it's come up with a bunch of variations for us. Obviously, it's done the heavy lifting. I think there's still some work that we can do to the copy just to make it a little bit better, but the start is obviously great. Interested in 50 pre-qualified industry companies I've already found looking for fractional role support. I'll send you the full campaign messaging scripts. See, I don't like focusing on the mechanism. I like focusing on the end result. So I'd probably just remove this. And then instead of saying built, you could say did this for a fractional CFO last month who closed 2 new retainers within 3 weeks using this exact campaign. So essentially the offer ends up being one line, first name, are you interested in being connected with 50 industry companies that I found looking for fractional support? PS, did this for fractional CFO last month. And you could say the specific one if you've done this before. I really like this. I think this is going to perform really well. And then I'd probably want to use something that kind of pokes the bear a little bit. I don't really see
any variations that provided that, which is strange given like the frameworks that I provided. But what you could do is, do the first line about one common pain point that they experience, and then have the second line be the offer. So the first line, obviously, something that you validated through data or just something that's common with the persona that you're reaching out to, and then jump into the offer. That way it's not just like in their face. And I usually like to A/B test both of those. And then the other thing too, you can see here, they used a PS line with social proof in email 1, and then a PS line with almost like a risk reduction rather, which basically just makes it an easier yes. So like PS, like obviously this is free, no call required. I'll just send it over to you, and then you can decide if it's worth running. You can determine whether or not this no call required is going to be the way you want to go. Obviously, it's less friction, you're going to get more responses, but they're going to be harder to get on a call after that, less intent. So play around with that as a variable and just determine what works best for you. If you have really good systems on the back end for converting interested leads into meetings, then you might want to start with the lower friction and then use your conversion mechanisms to get them on the call. But if not, then you might want to pull this out altogether. And then you can see here, it even came up with some follow-ups for us. So also first name, thought it was worth clarifying that this isn't just a lead list that I'm offering you. Like I'm actually providing these 50 prospects that are already looking for your service. So that's basically just like drilling home any objections, pre-handling things that you think they might be thinking after they read your email. So like if your email does sound too good to be true, the follow-up is a good opportunity to explain why it's not. Like, maybe the reason why you're actually doing what you're doing. And then you can make this as simple or as complicated as you want. I would also recommend flipping up the CTA. So if in the first call, you're just offering the actual front-end offer itself, the second email, you could probably offer like a video or something explaining how it works. Maybe a little bit less resistance. So start with high, then go with low, or you could do it the other way around, start with the low resistance offer and then jump into high. And then from here, you can see it came up with some subject lines. I don't mind these, but I have a prompt that I actually created to come up with subject lines internally. So what I'm gonna do is pull some of these email copy and then just prompt it with the subject line prompt and see what it comes up with there, see if it's any different. So as you can see here, it came up with 5 recommendations: prospect list, pipeline question, sourcing help, campaign ready, and first name leads. And it even comes up with the best recommendation, which is pipeline question. I think that could be a good one. I definitely like it. It's probably one I like the most, but it's almost a little bit obvious that it's going to be something sales related. So I'd almost use a different word here other than pipeline that maybe, answers the same thing, like maybe connection question or like opportunity question or something along those lines. You could even scrap the question thing altogether and just say like networking opportunity or partnership offer or something along those lines that imply that you're just like providing some sort of value to them and it's worthwhile for them to see what this thing is that you're offering. Again, when it comes to subject lines, biggest thing is curiosity. You don't want to tell them exactly what it's about, otherwise they're just not going to open it. They don't need to because they see that in the subject. You want to sell the open, which is obviously the priority here. All right, so now that everything's done, we're gonna wanna actually launch the campaign. So jumping into Email Bison here, we're gonna wanna import the CSV that we pulled from Clay. We're gonna wanna map the fields. So first name, last name, obviously important, email title. We can pull company name. We don't want this. We do want their LinkedIn. We don't want response summary, don't want list of companies. We do want service provided. We do want their industry cleaned. So the biggest thing is just making sure that the personalizations that you've mapped in Clay are actually going to come over. So the one we wanted was industry. We have industry cleaned here, and then service provided. We have service description here. Obviously clear up anything that you don't need. Cool. So now we're going to finish mapping that. We're going to call this fractional executives. We're going to update existing leads, and we're going to import. Awesome. So now you have your leads in there. We're going to want to set up the email copy. And again, we're just going to be pulling this over directly from Claude, maybe making a few small tweaks. So I'm going to try the partnership opportunity one that I was talking about. We can also test pipeline question. And we can do that, just to see which one performs better. Obviously, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, but if we're A/B testing the subject lines, we're going to need to ensure that we have dual variations for every single one of the email copies that we're going to send. So if we do 2 versions of the email copy, we're then going to have 4 variations of the email given the pair between subject line and email copy. So again, email 1 is going to be first name. We're going to pull this over directly from Claude, and we're going to want to make sure all of these variables are correct. Obviously, different platforms have different ways of doing it, so just ensuring all of these are set. Cool. So you can see how this kind of came about. So first name, interested in being connected with 27 industry companies that I found looking for service provided. PS, I shared the same info with the fractional CFO last month who closed 2 new retainer deals within 3 weeks. And then obviously with this, we're going to want to preview to see if our personalizations came through. So Ariana, are you interested in being connected with 27 design industry companies I found already looking for fractional CMO services? I think this probably could have been a little bit cleaner, but it does the trick. I think it'll be good enough. And then I like the PS line that all came through clean, super simple. They know exactly what they're getting, no resistance. You know, this doesn't really look like a sales message, maybe like a little bit, but not enough for them to be super skeptical. It's almost like, you know what, this person wants to provide something, let's bite, let's see what they're gonna offer, right? So I think that email copy is really good. And then again, we're gonna want to copy this same variation over to the pipeline question subject line. So we basically have 1A and 1B are both the same email with different subject lines. And then we'll want 1C and 1D, which again will be variations of the subject line for email copy 2. For email 2, I'm actually gonna pull this version, but I'm gonna manipulate it a little bit. So again, we're just gonna want to copy this over. I'm going to change the formalities a little bit. So basically we're just going to reverse the offer a little bit here. So you're offering services provided to industry companies, and then we want to clear this up a lot. And we almost want it to be very similar to the first one that we did. So we're going to want to use the same words here just so we can isolate variables a little bit. You know, like if the variations are very similar and there's only 1 or 2 small things that are different, it's almost being like very scientific about the approach to see what it is specifically about the email copy that resonated for the prospect with one variation over another. Obviously, if you change like 27 different things, it's going to be impossible to really see which one is causing the difference. So let's do that. Interested in being connected with 27 prospects that I've already identified in this space. We're going to fix the signature. I like this and I hate this at the exact same time, which obviously makes it difficult to decide what I want to do with it. Let's change this up a little bit. So I interviewed a few other fractional execs and they said client acquisition was their biggest challenge. Don't necessarily know, again, if I love this or hate this, but I want to test this out. Again, it's like, if you're doing something that's too good to be true, people are going to be skeptical. They're going to be like, why is this guy doing this? Like, what's in it for him? But if you are making it seem like there's a reason behind it, you know, I interviewed some fractional execs and I kind of thought that this was a good area to approach. So I'm going to see, you know, if this makes sense for you. You know, maybe this is like almost like a study or like you're trying to collect information about the space. It just gives them a reason to know why it is that you're doing this, like quote unquote kind gesture. So let's test that out. And then again, we're going to want to put this one into this version here. So we basically have email 1A, email 1B, email 1C, email 1D, A/B testing the subject line, A/B testing the copy. And then the last thing that we're going to want to do with each of these is run them through Spintax. All right, so we're going to jump into Spintax Baby, which is another custom GPT. And it's basically going to add Spintax to our email copy, which basically will provide us a bunch of variations so that it doesn't look like we're sending thousands of emails with the exact same phrasing. So I'll show you an example here. I usually like to add a note to don't change any formatting or structure, maintain casual tone. Cool. So we're basically just going to want to grab that and pull it back into the copy here. And as you can see, it just creates a bunch of different variations. And then you might want to fix some things up. Obviously, you can see here they said getting instead of getting, which is a little weird. I did tell it to be casual, so I guess it's pulling that, taking it a little too literally. But we're going to do this for both. Obviously, that makes it easy. So that's email 2. Then we're going to want to do it for the first email. Pull this back over. Awesome. Preview, make sure it looks all good. Interested in being connected with 27 design industries companies I've already found looking awesome. You know, just make sure there's nothing awkward in there. Sometimes they add some random variations that you want to be weary of. So that's cool. And then next we want to add an email step. So, you know, basically we're going to wait, let's do 3 days. And then we want to jump into email 2. So email 2, we're going to pull again from here. And for email 2, I'm actually going to use the same copy, but swap the CTA. So also first name, thought it was worth clarifying that this isn't a lead list. I'm actually offering to introduce you to the prospects we've found looking for this service. Worth hearing more. And then again, we just want to make sure that all of our variables are set. I might actually personalize this one. So again, it just kind of looks a little bit more personalized. And then, there's going to be situations where the prospects see email 2, they don't see email 1. So email 2 needs to make sense on its own. They're not always going to scroll back and look at the previous one. And then again, I mentioned I wanted to do a split test. So we're going to do the first variation, and then this one can be low resistance. So this might be a video, this might be the actual list, which doesn't really make sense, I guess, because we said it's not a lead list, but worth sharing. So maybe we're sharing a 3-minute video showing you how it works. And then we're going to copy these, spin tags, awesome, save, pull this over. I actually just want the CTA so that the other 2 variations are exactly the same. Cool. So I'm going to drop this here, and then I'm going to copy this section from this one so they're the exact same. Awesome. So those 2 are set. Preview, make sure they all look good, make sure personalizations come over. Fantastic. We're going to schedule this. Boom, 8 to 5, settings. Up to 10,000. I usually just put the max on this, doesn't really matter. Make sure it's plain text, don't track opens, no unsubscribe, load your sender emails, and launch. All right, guys, so just wanted to provide a quick update on how the campaign is going that we launched. So all in all, I think we got the campaign prepped in just under 2 hours, and it's now been about 3 hours, I want to say, into sending on the day. So you can see here, we've got roughly 22,000 sends. Of those, we have a 1.25% reply rate, which is 28 replies. And then of that, we've actually got 7 interested responses that have come through already, which is awesome. That is, more than I expected, to be honest. So let's jump in real quick to see what some of these responses look like. As you can see, the Slack channel is kind of popping off all day. Every 30 minutes or so, we've had one come through. So you can see here, I'm always interested. Are you working with any other advisors? What's your offer? This person's looking for, qualified meetings that are charged on a performance basis. Maybe not a fit. They're too small at the moment, but they're in the process of adding more fractional CTOs by the end of the year. So maybe it makes sense to have a conversation then. End of the year is only 4 weeks away. So, we really could get some conversations moving there. What's your fee to work with you? That's from a different campaign. Yes, I'm interested, so on and so forth. So you can kind of see them just rolling through as the day progresses. Obviously looking good so far, and I'll keep you guys updated as we continue to push through. And just as I'm running through this walkthrough, we actually had the first meeting come through. So you can see here the prospect that just responded positively, probably about 10 minutes ago, just booked in, which is awesome. We've got him here booked in 3 days from now, which I believe is Friday, and I will keep you guys in the loop on how that goes. All right, so I wanted to jump on for one more update as we wrap up the week on the campaign that we launched together. As you can see here in the interested channel, we see, I'm interested in hearing you pitch next week. Can you send me some additional information? I'm open to a conversation. What's the cost? Of course, I'd be interested. Sure. I'm always interested. Are you working with any other advisors? Thanks for reaching out. I'm interested. What's your offer? Yes, if you can guarantee the right kind of clients. At this point, we're too small, but maybe 2026. So that's only like 4 weeks away. Totally fine. Very interested. What's your fee to work with you? Yes, I'm interested. And the list goes on. And then from those interested responses, obviously you can see the booking started to pour in slowly after into the week. So you got one here today, another today, another one today. We had one yesterday, another yesterday, one on Tuesday, another on Tuesday, and that's a duplicate, and then another one on Tuesday before that. So basically what we're looking at here, let's jump into the actual core campaign metrics. So we can look at it kind of like from a zoomed out perspective. So 3,200 emails sent to 3,200 prospects, basically like a 1-for-1 at this point because we're not halfway through the campaign yet. 40 people had responded, which is a 1.24% reply rate. A little bit low, but doesn't really matter because as you can see here, we've got 13 interested responses, and I believe there was 5 of those 13 that had already booked in. And we're only early days on this campaign, as you can see here. Generally with the automated follow-ups, people will start continuing to book in, going into next week, and sometimes it does take a little bit longer. But to have only sent 3,200 contacts, already got 13 interested responses, and 5 of those at least that have already booked in. And the first step of this was simply just finding out who we wanted to reach out to, because our client was an M&A firm that helps business owners who are looking to sell their companies. And in their space, it's normal to get a bunch of replies to cold emails because they're just reaching out offering to buy someone's business. However, if you do this the wrong way, most of those replies will come from people with terrible companies, which is obviously why they're so willing to sell it. So I knew coming into this that we had to do things a little bit differently. Instead of trying to target one specific group of people, we kind of flipped the process on its head. We decided to start with a wide audience and do a ton of filtering on the back end once they start replying. But here's how we actually did it. So jumping into Apollo, the list was actually really simple. We made a search criteria here of those that were founder owner. If you really want to, expand the TAM, you can add those in a financial role like CFOs, even presidents sometimes is relevant here. You're going to want to jump into location. So for this client specifically, they wanted to focus in the US. We started with 51 to 100 employees, but realistically, this is going to depend on what the client is really looking for. And then other than that, the only real complication we added on the top end, or filter for that matter, is minimum 10 years. So by adding a filter for minimum 10 years, it means the company has survived long enough for it to be somewhat established. A company that's around for like 1-2 years might still be really trying to get a hold of things, where someone that's been in their industry for 10 plus years, they obviously have an idea of what's going on. It's obviously an established business, and it's one that's probably worth buying. You can also see here that we kept the industry and keyword section blank. Again, we're taking a wide approach at the very beginning, and we're going to do a lot of our filtering on the back end. Once you've got your list set, you can use a tool like Appify or any sort of Apollo scraper, or if you really want to do things the traditional way, you can, set up an Apollo subscription and export it that way. But once you have your list, you're going to want to export it into a tool like Apollo. So as you can see here, this is the first list that we started with for this client specifically. We cleaned up everything from their first name, last name, email, organization, website URL, etc. We literally just kept this to the basics. And then the biggest thing here, because it was such a large list, was ensuring that every single lead was verified. So we ran this through our verification tool, which in this case we were using Million Verifier. And this just told us whether or not the email that we had on file was going to be capable of accepting messages. We do this so that we don't get a bunch of bounces, we don't run into our email getting flagged, or just anybody in general that isn't really capable of responding to us. Once that was set, we jumped into industry personalization. So I'll jump into the offer and the copy a little bit more, but the thing here is we wanted to add a little bit of relevance, and we only did this after we verified each one of the emails. That way we knew we weren't spending AI credits on prospects that we weren't even able to reach out to in the first place. And just a quick look under the hood here on the prompt itself. So essentially what we did was we used ChatGPT 4o Mini to run Claygent. If you don't know what Claygent is Clay's tool to do web research and really just find information on the prospects that you're reaching out to. So in this case specifically, we just kept it pretty simple. We were just trying to have it act as a professional market analyst with deep expertise in company classification and industry research across all global markets, and basically just go through, check out, I believe it was their website, and just validate which industry that they were a part of. I won't get into all of the specifics on the prompt, but obviously it's important to give it a few examples of what you want it to look like, some things you don't want it to output, and just generally the steps that it should take and where it should go to find the information. And as always, if you have your own ChatGPT OpenAI key, use that here, as you'll save a ton on credits. Now, if you want to book more calls without spending hours having to find and scrape the leads yourself, you can book a call via the first link below. We'll come up with the best strategy to map your total addressable market, ensure that your offer is cold traffic ready, along with any necessary personalizations, and build out the outbound infrastructure capable of reaching your audience on a consistent basis without landing in the spam folder. And not only did we book 47 calls in 45 days for this client, but we've also helped clients like A. Newman and Associates book 31 calls in just 31 days, and and Relay partners book 42 calls in just 30 days. So if you want to see how we can do something similar for you, you can book a call below. But either way, finding the right people is just the start, because now we get to the fun part where we actually have to message them. You see, you can't just message business owners asking them if they want to sell. It's too direct, and to be honest, even if they're interested, most people will end up just saying no. So instead, we use what I like to call strategic bait, and this can really apply to any cold email strategy. The idea is realistically just implying that there's a little bit more intent than there actually is in the situation. Almost a white lie, so to speak. In this case, we told them that we already had somebody that was interested in buying their business, which completely changes the frame. And it's still true because technically we're reaching out on behalf of an M&A firm where that would be the case. But this reframe obviously made our email sound 10 times more attractive. Now, here's how we actually position the offer along with the scripts that we used to get them on the call. So the main offer here was obviously just that they were looking to purchase the person's business. Why I think this worked is that by saying that there was someone interested, it creates a little bit of urgency, there's some sense of curiosity, and it makes them feel chosen. Again, you can think about how you can apply these same kinds of principles to other offers with other messaging. It works the exact same. It's all just human psychology. And in the end, it's obviously risk-free. You're just jumping on to, see what the offer is, see who the person is. There's nothing on the line. You're not being forced to fork over any large retainer or anything like that on the first call. In most cases, we also end up coming up with a front-end offer for our clients, but in this case, we were actually able to get pretty good results with that. Now, jumping into the email copy, you can see we kept things pretty simple, and I'm not going to go into the exact copy because obviously that would kind of dox my clients and we're still running this campaign and things like that, but I'll show you the exact principles that we use and how you can kind of replicate them for your offer. So when it comes to the subject line, I will repeat this until the end of time. It never needs to be that complicated. You can always keep it super simple, super curiosity inducing, something like first name thoughts, something vague that kind of roughly touches on the point, or just suggests that you have some sort of idea or something to share with them. 2 words, maybe 3 words, leave it open-ended. The whole point of the subject line is just to get them to read the preview text. And then obviously the whole point of the preview text is just to get them into the body. But in this case, we wrote up a couple options. So the first one is that, hey, we have a buyer looking for businesses in the personalization industry. So this is where that clay personalization would come in, where we say we're looking for companies specifically in the industry in which they're in. So if it is healthcare, it'll say healthcare industry. If your client or if you specifically do have an industry that you're focusing on and the list was built that way, you can always just make this, that word without having to use the personalization. But the beauty here is it allows us to create a really large list of multiple industry companies and then personalize it the same way as if it was kind of one-to-one. And then I also added this here, given their current multiples. So what this does is this, 1, makes it a little bit more casual, more conversational. 2, implies that there's a big opportunity there. It's like, hey, we're looking at companies in this space because recently they've been worth a lot of money. This is obviously very effective, but what you're going to want to maybe stray away from is using this in situations where it's generic, because there are going to be situations where you reach out to somebody in a very boring industry which doesn't have a good multiple. So you have to kind of use this sparingly or just be a little bit more strategic about it. But honestly, I thought I'd throw it in there because I think it can be incredibly effective. And then I wanted to give you a little bit more of a hyper personalized approach that you could take to this. So instead of saying, hey, we have a buyer looking for businesses in the healthcare industry, again using that example, you could literally go into the exact details of their business. So I didn't actually put together this personalization, but it's something that I think could perform even better than what we set up personally. And that is just saying we have a buyer looking for businesses that, and then a complete personalization of their business. So it could be, we have a buyer looking for businesses that are in the X industry that serve, X client type and have been around for 20 years or something super specific like that. Something where they know or think that you are targeting them exactly, where it couldn't be made up or it couldn't be personalized. Again, we didn't actually run this, but I think it could perform really well. And then this format realistically is just kind of like a first line plus CTA. The CTA is going to be, in this case, since X, Y, and Z reason, would it be worth a quick intro? And this reason could be generic based on information you got on Apollo, or different things about their personas or just demographics, or it could be about the business in specific. So I'm trying to think of a couple good examples in this case. You could say, since you've been in the business for 10 years, and like maybe something implying their nearness to retirement. Would this be worth a quick intro? You could also say things around like funding, or even if it's just referencing any public major company achievements. So that could always work really well here. And truthfully, like if you wanted to, you could just keep it super simple, not even include the personalized reason. You could just say, given that you match this description, would it be worth a quick intro? It doesn't have to be crazy personalized. I just kind of want to give you guys the idea so you can decide how far you want to take it. And then for option 2 here, we kept building on that idea of curiosity. So even if it's just to see what the offer on the table could be. And this is what I call like a 2-part CTA. So you almost have the question, and then you're almost just like seeing if that's worth their time or that is of interest to start. And then there's going to be situations where it's not. And that second part of the CTA is realistically just to stack the interest. So like if the first part doesn't catch their interest, the second part might. And that was the whole goal with this. Again, you can try either or. We always like to A/B test a bunch of different things, different lines, different CTAs, just to see what works. And obviously you want to keep a good degree of similarity so you can be very scientific about it. But here's the thing, as much as we were taking a broad approach with targeting, we weren't trying to get everybody on the call with these scripts. Because like I mentioned, a lot of these people are going to be unqualified, which is exactly why we used a pre-call form to filter out bad businesses before they wasted anybody's time. This way, we were able to focus all of our energy on the most qualified leads. So here's how we set it up. And this can be different for, every single client, depending on how you want to do things. But this client specifically wanted to make sure that their financials were in check. So we had a question here about their financials. They wanted to ask about timing. Again, they wanted to make sure that this was something within the near term and not the long term. So we asked them when it was that they were looking to potentially exit their company. And then the last question, which we kept as optional, was why are you considering? This is more of a discovery question, and this is something you might want to save for the first call, but in some cases it's worth having this information going into that. It's obviously something that you want to play with. When it comes to any of these pre-call qualification questions, it ends up being this lever that you need to like tighten or open up depending on the number of calls coming through. So if you end up adding pre-call qualification that's a little too tight, then truthfully what you're going to end up doing is removing some of the good calls. So you have to play around with adding and removing resistance, and in many cases you get the best result by creating the most minimum amount of friction that you need to determine whether or not a call is going to be qualified for you. Again, we try to be somewhat objective about this. Businesses that meet the financial criteria and the timing criteria usually move forward, but there's obviously kind of like a subjective aspect that goes into it as well. If our client checks out the company and likes the industry, sees that there's some potential there, maybe they're a little bit below thresholds, there are cases where we just move forward with them. Now here's what happened over the next 45 days. Since launch, we sent just under 40,000 emails to 20,000 prospects. That's a simple 2 emails per prospect. We saw 789 replies, which was just under 4%, and 20% or almost 21% of those were interested, 164 positive responses. Now, obviously, all of those weren't going to be a fit, and we had to do some heavy qualification on the back end. But as you can see, the results were really good. And obviously, from that, we booked 47 calls in just 45 days. But here's the real result. Since talking to the client, there's actually been a bunch of those calls that have been pushed forward into the next step of the process. And according to them, there's a few good ones that are almost across the finish line.
And that is everything you could possibly need to set up a killer cold email campaign, even if you're starting from scratch. Now, this was obviously a massive learning curve that you just went on. And if you're looking for a way to run cold email for your business without having to implement all of these steps yourself, you can simply just book a call using the link in the description below. We've helped our clients book around 3,000 sales calls in the past year using the exact system that I've just shared with you. So if you want to see if we can help you do the same, again, just hit the link below.